distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, record.
We can see you. Can you hear us?
Thank you for putting that flyer up. Hotel family, my name is Brother Ray. Good evening, family. We'd like to welcome everyone to the BK History Club. But first and foremost, to the people that came out in the weather in New York, that's in here in the live, give yourself a very big hand. And then I want the Zoom audience all over the United States and the metropolitan area that's willing to log in and support the BK History Club. Give yourself a big hand, because you could be doing a whole lot of other things, but you decide to support us in any form or fashion, and we appreciate that. So we meet here in honor of the great historians. Bill Mackey Jr., one of the greatest. Professor Amos Wilson. El-Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz. Original member of the Mackey's group. Brother Assad, may he rest in peace, good God. The real attorney at war, the great Alton H. Maddox, Jamil Alameen, who just joined the ancestors, and from, I know he already kicking behind down there and getting those folks that did him in, because let me tell you, he's fighting already down there, and he done hooked up with Malcolm and Betty and all of them, and he's doing it. Louis Ray Rivera, he's talking to Gil Noble, he's already talking to Khalid. So, Jamil Alameen, H. Rap Brown, and they down there, and they making plans, because if you think the fight is over here, when we leave here, the same white folks that's here causing trouble get buried the same way we do. So, as Amos would say, they gonna be right down there with us. So we want to honor these people, because let me tell you, they went beyond the call of duty. They could have drunk the Kool-Aid like so many of these organizations, these shakedown organizations are doing. They could have drunk the Kool-Aid and said, yeah, I'm going to take the money. They offered Malcolm X $500,000 to drink the Kool-Aid, and he said no. And at that time, $500,000 was a lot of money. So you got people that's drinking the Kool-Aid, and you steady talking about Trump, they take that money from them, the white man in a minute, and then stand up there and say all this nonsense. And they doing it right in front of our face while we suffering. So we're going to move the camera over to the Amos collection in honor of Amos Wilson and Brother Sababu from African World Info Systems. Amos could have took the money. We have Blueprint for Black Power. We have Sababu's latest classic in honor of Amos, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat Toward a Reclamation of the African Mind. And that's what we have to do. We have to reclaim our mind, because they know how to keep us against each other, and they're doing it now. Black on black violence, the psychodynamic of self-black annihilation in service of white domination. And family, whether we know it or not, the white man is still dominating us. He controls every move we make. He controls our money. He controls everything. And we are controlled by him. That's why we do what we do. Awakening the natural genius of black children, African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order, issues of manhood in black and white, and that's a big problem today. Issues of manhood. The falsification of African consciousness, Louis Ray Rivera's classic Jazz in Jail, and S.K. Damiano, The Distorted Truths and the Bastardization of African Cosmology. So those are publications by Amos Wilson, and Sababu is keeping his legacy alive, and we are controlled. Don't you let nobody, if your money is in that bank belonging to others, they can't stand us. Because when we had something going on in Black Wall Street and throughout the United States, when we was rolling and doing good with our own businesses, they tore it down. Because we didn't have an armed force to protect it. Whoever has the artillery to protect themselves, they have it, and we fail to have it. So I'm going to mention some books. This is for in honor of Leola Maddox, the United African Movement. And I was telling Miss D, she had an old car, moderately old, good gas mileage. And she would come from Teaneck in an old car. She believed in bringing people together. Ate her dinner in the United African Movement on Atlantic, on Fulton. And she believed in bringing people together. And we would come out, I wouldn't care how cold it was, we would go to that UAM. And when we would try to ask people, come to the UAM and listen to the speakers that would come there. Linda Gilbo would tell you, she's sitting right there, she would tell you, you would beg people to come listen to the speakers coming with the UAM. And you know what the first thing would come out their mouth? I got something to do. I'm busy. We used to have Dr. Sabi. And the average person say, I'm not going to see him. We had Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, and they would say, I'm not going there. We couldn't get nobody to come. But the regulars that was committed to the UAM and Leola and Alton, may both of them rest in peace. And she came there and wanted to bring people together because the strong conversation of talking amongst each other is much better. And what's the name would come from Newark. Got his name, he's a member of African Echoes. He left us too soon. And he would come all the way from Newark every Wednesday. I could trust him to know his name. And he would come and I would walk him to the train station. We'd be leaving there, come home 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And people would get on the train after coming live to the UAM. So that's why I wear this hat. In honor. And all these people came. Nothing like a live audience. So I have some books in honor of Dr. Ben. We have Black Man of the Nile and his family, and I say it every week. Dr. Ben gave people marching orders, and not too many people followed them. But we have a speaker here tonight that followed Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben, Black Man of the Nile, and he goes into those great civilizations and how they built those great temples and didn't make a mistake. And now we're paying some Asians to build statues in the motherland, and everybody's still in there tearing the place up and raping it. But the Sahel region is moving toward independence. And we hoping that nothing happens. So we have Dr. Ben. Another book we're talking about is African Slavery in Latin America and the Caribbean. So slavery was not just in America. They dropped us all over the place. And then people don't want to be African no more. The European and the Arab. So if you didn't fight for reparations in your own country, do not come to America and go against the African American that's trying to get something for what has been done to us. Do not, if you didn't do it in your own country. Queen Nzinga, fierce warrior that went head to head with the Portuguese, and they didn't even want to let her sit down. And the brothers that was with her, a member of their army, made their own bench. And she sat on there and did fierce negotiations with these barbarians. And if the sisters in America read about Queen Nzinga and Winnie Mandela, they wouldn't let these chumps do stuff to them that they're doing to our women. Winnie Mandela took a tire and put it over a cat and burnt him up because she knew he was no good. So to the sisters, read this book and get out of the clutches of people that's got you dressing all kind of stupid ways, showing everything. The Destruction of Black Civilization, Chancellor Williams. I want to thank the African Echoes family. It's an old, going to the archives of Gil Noble, and Chancellor Williams points out how they dumped the drugs with relationship with the government and the Italians and organized crime. The French Connection. Chancellor tells you the mistakes we made in the land of the black. Chancellor explains those great dynasties. You know, we had armies, 30,000, 40,000, that was tearing stuff up, ruling Europe. The Moors were African. And he also talks about the Arab slave trade. Then the European slave trade. So Chancellor Williams, this book right here, all volumes, and I want to thank the African Echoes family with Brother Truss and True and the gang. And I read this, but if you go into Gil Noble, that disgusting ABC like it is, she has never continued the work of Gil. Gil, I remember he had the interview with the drug addicts and how they dumped the drugs in Harlem and all the good stuff. It's gone now. Gil Noble paid the big price. Without sanctuary. Everybody's talking about reparations. They got all these hearings and going against each other and trying to dictate where money should go. And they don't talk about the atrocities of what was done when they put African men in boiling sugar, took one horse, tied it to the arm of an African woman, took another horse, tied it to the arm of the African, and the horse ripped the woman apart and the baby was inside. And the insurance, where they insured us. And who ran the slave markets, who greased you down with palm oil, who threw you overboard on the ships. And those strong Africans said they would rather die at the seas than come to these deadly areas. And you're still running around wanting to have a debate. And all these other people got reparations without a debate. It's sickening. Without sanctuary, hanging from the trees. At the hands of these Europeans. And I know what I really want to tell you, but the thing gonna be on Facebook. Have another study with some nonsense and somebody coming there talking about, I think you should get this and I think you should get that. And I think they didn't ask them other people that, they gave them the money. African or African American, black identity and political activism in the 1700s. Deadly times, vicious times. So we still been fighting. And if you haven't fought over here, in the 16th century, the 17th century, the 18th century, keep your mouth shut. Just don't say nothing because you didn't pay no dues. You didn't pay no dues down in the 5 Points. You didn't pay no dues being hung at the lamppost on 42nd Street in front of the Children's Museum Orphanage. You didn't get burned to the stake upstate. Slavery was barbaric in the northern states, not just the southern states. They tied you to a tree and whipped you. They show you, Hollywood will show you and make it seem like we didn't fight nowhere. That we just, Booker T. Washington, Tyreen Wright says Booker T was not a sellout. He was a bad dude. And she got a book here, and I'm gonna bring her back. And this book is serious. And he taught how to make bricks. And we don't own a brick making factory. He was not what they say he is. And we have Tyreen Wright's book. Excellent lecture. The Secret History of Jewish World Domination by Andrew Carrington Hitchcock. Excellent book. I found it. In honor of Cynthia McKinney. In honor of Cynthia McKinney. How the U.S. creates S-hole countries. And when you hear the Don say a place is an S-hole country and this place and that place, you better look at the individual in the country that made it an S-hole country, and that's this country. With the CIA and the jackals and those massive armies and the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, where they go in and do what they do. So read the book before you open your mouth about somebody saying something. Read how it happened. Read how the people sold out there. Read how the coups. Read how they create situations and give you excuse to go in there, to take the natural resources. So we're hoping that don't happen to the Sahara region because there's help over there. That's why they ain't going there yet. She has another book, When China Sneezes, from the economic lockdown to the global political. This in that book. And the same people that did Jamil Alameen, H. Rap Brown in, is the same people that did Cynthia McKinney. And in my opinion, she's the only one that cared about the state of Georgia. And on orders. These blacks on orders from other people, from white folks that's in control down there. Cynthia McKinney was a bad sister. And nobody helped. And they running around with this nonsense, what they doing. Big ups to Cynthia. Honor of Louis Ray, Jazz in Jail. Louis Ray Rivera came down here and he took over the mantle when Professor Mackey left us, and he would come down here and share. Bed-Stuy greatest, Louis Ray Rivera, and he would come down here and speak for hours. And me, Calvin, Assad, Brother Colvin, and the members that supported Mackey and wanted to keep his name alive, we would walk him home, and we'd leave Quincy Street and we'd walk to Jefferson Avenue, which is 3 blocks, and he talked for another hour and a half. Big ups to Louis Ray. Bed-Stuy greatest out of Marcy. The Unspoken Alliance, Israel's secret relationship with apartheid South Africa. Dope Incorporated, Lyndon LaRouche. I want to thank Lyndon for bringing up this book, Dope Incorporated. And it talks about the medical marijuana. It talks about the drug war. It talks about all that. Hello. Hello. It talks about the drug war and how they dumped the drugs in the black community all through the United States during the 60s. They got the Chinese strung out. They got a book called Low Life with the opium dens in Chinatown. And the Emperor of China said, I got to do something about it because these British is known to tear them. Now we got medical marijuana. The only thing the Democratic Party has gave to youth is medical marijuana where it's legal. And not black folks ain't the only ones smoking it. White people were smoking it. Everybody running around. And the Arabs are selling it in their stores. They used to stay in front of the liquor store. They ain't staying in front of the liquor store no more. And you don't know what's in it. Because it ain't coming out of the ground. And I ain't seen nobody laughing with a big giant Subway tuna fish sandwich in their hand. You used to smoke it and start laughing at everything moving. And looking, now you hungry, ain't nobody laughing or nothing after they smoking this crap. Lyndon LaRouche brings that out. And George Soros is the man behind the curtain. They got a book, how George Soros and 60s radicals took control of the Democratic Party, and this classic, The Man Behind the Curtain, the secret network of George Soros, and his son Alex is at the helm. And the world's greatest investor, bad investor, got more money than anybody, can buy anybody, and he's buying, he done brought everybody done took that money, drinking the Kool-Aid. They done took his money, and they full of crap, and they doing his work. So I call him King George. He financed the King's March. He tells these Negroes what to protest, what march. He's a bad man. Read books on Soros. Read books on Bloomberg. Don't talk about Elon Musk running things when these folks behind the curtain running things right in front of your face and you don't want to say nothing. Neil Gerbler. They hated Neil Gerbler for writing this book. How the Jews invented. It's an invention. And they was getting ready to go belly up. And then they came out with the black exploitation movies. And we ran. And they made a lot of money on us. And you would see how Harry Cohen, William Fox, Fox News, Louis B. Mayer, MGM, Harry Warner, Warner Brothers, Adolf Zucker, Carl Lambert, and how they was allowed to make these movies and create events that never happened. Never happened. And created lifestyles that never happened. They did not live like that. And when you look at the movie, The Gangs of New York, talk about the 5 points and how the Irish, the Italians came here. The Bloods and the Crips and these gangs ain't got nothing on the Dead Robins. Got nothing on the Bowery Boys. Got nothing, don't know nothing about life in the 5 points. San Juan Hill, where they ran us out. Big slums. And then you talk about relief. You talk about black folks getting welfare when it was relief, when white folks was getting it. And you're steady talking about us. Get this book. Anybody that's getting in the entertainment industry, get this book. And they did not like, and they still didn't like it. But if you read it, you'll understand what goes on. The Brofman family. And it's still going on with complete control. And they buy black actors and women actors and have them dressing all kind of ways and doing all kind of stuff. Ayo Kamati and his 1-2 blockbuster and also the book, War on the Horizon. Jews are the problem, and Jews are the problem, part 2, the psychology of the Jew. And we want to thank Brother Ayo, who's running for the 41st District in Maryland. He wrote 2 books, and they're small reads, but the information on them is impeccable. They're never going to stop books. Never. You will find that book if you search. Professor Mackey, Dr. Clinton, Dr. Clark, and them had Monderson, our speaker. I went to his house. He got so many books around. He reminded me of Dr. Mackey. He got books everywhere. Whitney Webb, and she gets into the Epstein, volume 1, volume 2, but it was some people before her. So before you talking about bringing out some files, you better remember, Regular people could not go to the Epstein Island. Regular schmoes that's running around here being manipulated, talking about release the files. You couldn't get into the party. You ain't got enough money. And all the stuff that's been in there. You don't want the real stuff to come out. Because they will tell you, everybody that was at that party, everybody that was going to that island, they was there, the big boys, the corporate hound dogs, the millionaires, the zillionaires. And here regular folks talking about release the file. You can't get next to the place. You can't get next to the place. The medical pharmaceutical killing machine. Read this book and you'll understand about the medical establishment. Vax versus unvax, let the science speak. The Wuhan cover-up. And Dr. Mackey would always say, and Dr. Lewis said, the Trump family came here with one suitcase, like a whole bunch of other Europeans. But when you want to learn about somebody, Dr. Monderson has books, Dr. Lewis, late Dr. Ben Clark, I just picked this up, the Trumps. 3 generations that built an empire. When you want to know about somebody, you read the book. You want to know who Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings and all that, and the Civil War and what he did, you read the books. So this book has over 500 pages. The father came with one suitcase. Has anybody recommended any books on this family? The Biden family, the Clinton family, the Bush family, the Cheney family, the power brokers of the world, and it's more than one book. Read about individuals. The real Anthony Fauci, down the CO rabbit hole, the ultimate vaccine timeline. It goes to a history of vaccines, and they're starting to eliminate vaccines now because they're finding out they're no good. Capitalism on a ventilator. This gentleman wrote a book on the death of his mother. Crimes, Conspiracy, and the Death of My Mother. Mark Sloan. Deception. Rand Paul and the CO-19. Sudden death, the epidemic of sudden death. 20, 21, 22, but I'm going to 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Where every time you turn around, somebody is winding up going. And they sleep, not waking up. Young football players, young sports, gone. Robert Dow talks about it. Never forget this never forget this guy, Fauci. And he was an advisor to presidents that did what he said. Because you go to your advisor and they finding out now they made a wrong decision by following his advice. Dr. Colleen Hubbard, neither safe nor effective. And the blockbuster, the Pfizer papers. And it tells you about the blood disorders, the spike protein, what happens to your blood. And Pfizer did not want to come out with the publication, but Naomi Wolf and them, through the Freedom of Information Act. The United States have a Freedom of Information Act. It tells you about the blood disorder. This is Pfizer. And they forced them. Now, I don't know how they stopped the Moderna papers. And I bought 3 copies and they stopped it. You can't get it. But I'm going to do like Professor Mackey. I'm going to search. How did this giant monster called Moderna, who never made a vaccine in their life, stop the publication of the book? Pfizer brought it out. But Naomi Wolf and them is going to continue. Get it? got some community events for the listening audience to get on. Thorough Black Talk, Tad, Keisha, Ashe, Sister Mama, Brother Blacksmith, and Sister Brooke, they are getting it on, and they are exposing everybody that's going against the Reparations Committee, where they got the Freedmen's Act, and I'm finding out that they got some con artists that done did some stuff in the back room. And we all follow a couple of these phony balonies. So I want to thank Thorough Black Talk and the Freedmen and everybody that's bringing up information on this reparation thing, because it's definitely a new phenomenon, financed by old King George. Blog Talk Radio. That reparations bill sat up there for 40 years by John Conyers, and they never opened it up. And then they would say the other lady continue with it, Sheila Jackson Lee. I think she made a transition.
Yes.
But it sat there for 40 years. Now all of a sudden it's all over the place. You better find out what's going on. But they do have some grassroots organizations that's been pushing for 40 years. And Queen Mother Morbin's talking about it. Be careful, the man behind the curtain. Blog Talk Radio, Sister Empress, Brother Lumumba, Brother Moses, Miss T. Saturdays, 10 o'clock, and we be getting it on. And we got to be cool now. Brother Lumumba gonna tell you, watch yourself, baby, watch yourself. You can't say that now. But we got a good crew, and we support each other, and it's just lovely with Sister Empress and log on. You can get in the conversation, but you got to watch your language. Because Brother Lumumba gonna put a big stop sign and say, hold up. Sister Empress Chi and the Million Women's March. Ayo Kamati, Sankofa Revolutionary Radio, Anthony Mohammed, WSYP 95.1. They have so many programs that come on, and the blockbuster on Monday is Dr. Haru Results, Herbal Results with his magnesia, good stuff. That comes on from 9 to 10. But then they give you Ayo Kamati from 10 to 11. Then they have another program. Then they give you Dr. Aleem. It is rebroadcast. So it comes on. Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. And Brother Anthony getting it on. Darren Muhammad, State of the City. Our powerhouse out of Baltimore comes on sometime Wednesday, Thursday, but the blockbuster program is Saturday. And that's an excellent program. So in Baltimore, in the 31st District, Ayo Kamati is running for office, and his brother Ebron, is running for office in Baltimore. They want to change that, what's going on down there. So Baltimore, you better get out there and vote for them. Because that place been in trouble for a long time. And it don't seem like them folks down there ain't doing nothing about it. So we got two people that's willing to step up. So that's Darren Muhammad. Every Tuesday at 7, Dr. Aleem, Your Immunity Project. Kalfani Radio, and it has a Zoom audience, and you can ask all your questions with Dr. Aleem. Kalfani Radio, and you can get the information. Every Friday, African Echoes with Trust, Brother True, and they're doing the psychology of self-hatred, and then they're also doing Saturday with another 1-2 punch. The Know Thyself Study Group, they're doing Chancellor Williams, and they're explaining all the stuff mistakes we made as an African people. Chancellor Williams went beyond the call of duty. The Simotap organization, it's Continue Fight. Well, Netflix has canceled the Good Time series, the disgusting Good Time series. So now, you got to go to the next one, because Hollywood, and when you read An Empire of Their Own, and it started with Birth of a Nation, and they've been doing us in, got us dressing up in dresses and all kind of nonsense. So Hollywood has a way of destroying an image. And the Italians did not like the image that they portrayed about them in The Godfather. Because every Italian is not a gangster. Some of them are hard-working people, and they did not like it. And every Irish, they did not like Hollywood. We have to step up and stop them from destroying our image. And us black folks that they control have to stop doing these roles, because they all secondary. They're not powerful roles. They always behind somebody. You're always scared and shivering. So those are images that are portrayed all over the world. When Hollywood portrays black people, they look at you all over the world. So when you go to other places, they look at what Hollywood says, how Hollywood portrays us. And then they find out different. So all the lectures on the BK History Club can be seen on YouTube. And you type in, you're going, and you could come down. Huh?
The store. The store.
Oh, sorry. I want to thank my lovely wife. The UNIA with Brother Raymond. In the store. The Rock. Raymond DeGal. And they have the store. The Rock on Merritt Boulevard, 13205 Merritt Boulevard. And the UNIA. And its process of trying to open up our mind and get us back into one mind at a time. So if you get a chance, 13205 Merritt Boulevard. The UNIA, and they're doing this job, they got to flip us one at a time, and you feel real good when you go there and spend a little money. It's directly across the street from Home Depot in Queens. So give yourself a break and at least go out there once a month. And I want to thank the UNIA, because my mind is twisted too. So I'm not excluding myself. So these are just some community events. We got some, listen, get your popcorn and get your peanuts, family. This is going to be a 4 years coming up that's really going to be real crazy. And you're going to really start standing up, because they getting ready to, what's getting ready to happen in New York is going to blow your mind. So you better stand up, because everybody done drunk the Kool-Aid. So ladies and gentlemen, I read his column in the Daily Challenge. His Sonny Carson and what he does, and he's a supporter of the Mackey's group and BK History Club, and he's always willing to come down and tell a story, and that's why I like him. He comes down, and I want to get his information on the YouTube, just like Dr. Lewis, and anybody that want to come down and give me a call, we'll put you on the calendar 2026. Ain't no big thing. Ladies and gentlemen, give yourself a great big hand on noted historian and good man and great scholar, author of a bunch of books, Dr. Fred Monderson.
Thank you.
2026, I'm going to cut the presentation down to about 10 minutes.
You really had to know about that one.
Hotep family, thank you for allowing me to be here today to share some of my knowledge with you. I want to thank Brother Ray and his wife for the wonderful work that they do to keep this idea of informing our community, providing them with knowledge, and allowing them to be able to decode their environment, as Dr. Leonard James would say. I am here this evening to continue my previous lecture. This would be creation part 2. I don't have anything to any images to use up some of my limited time, so I'm going to get right into it. I want to review at first some of what we discussed at the prior lecture. We were concerned essentially with Egyptian religion and the whole idea of whether the ancient Egyptians, the Africans, practiced monotheism, that is to say, the belief in one God. So we examined the Heliopolitan theology, that is the theology that came out of Heliopolis. The Memphite theology that came out of Memphis with Ptah as the principal divinity worship in that system. The Theban theology, where Amun-Ra was again the principal god of that time period. The Hermopolitan theology, where Thor out of Hermopolis. Now there's a difference between Heliopolis and Hermopolis. Heliopolis is where Ra and Atum reign supreme. Hermopolis is where Thought, God of wisdom, function. 3 of the 4, Hermopolis with Ra and Atum, Memphis with Ptah, Hermopolis with Thought, and Karnak or Thebes with Amun-Ra. 3 of these 4 comprise 9-member innates. As an example, Ra-Atum was an individual, single individual, who gave birth to Shu and Tefnut, and Shu and Tefnut gave birth to Geb and Nut, and Geb and Nut gave birth to Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. So 8 and Ra comprised 9 in the original Ennead. In Ptah's time, he incorporated the said 9 members into his system. Hermopolis, where Thought was the principal divinity, he was, among other things, God of wisdom, mathematics, you name it. He was also a magician. He laughed 8 times. Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. And 8 gods appeared with predetermined functions. And as soon as they arrived on the scene, then they went about to what they were created to do. So the 8 and himself became 9. However, at Karnak, Thebes, where Amun-Ra was the principal deity, his Ennead had 15 members. At a much later time, well, that's principally 19th dynasty, 20th dynasty. But during the 19th dynasty, Seti I built a temple at Abydos, where 7 deities were worshipped. 3, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. The 3 principal gods worshipped during the New Kingdom: Ra, Amun, and Ptah. And the 7th member was Seti deified. So Seti himself became a god to comprise the 7 members of the Osirian Abydos Ennead. So, as I said, 3 of the 4 comprised Enneads of 9, and 1 had an Ennead of 15, and another had an Ennead of 7. During the Old Kingdom, Osiris challenged Ra for supremacy and won. At Abydos, again where Seti I built the temple to Osiris, Flinders Petrie found 10 levels of temples dating back to the beginning of Egyptian history. Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid, they found evidence of him being at that site in a temple that was built for him. So that is the sort of background synopsis of what we had done prior. So we now have pre-unification divine actors and drama in the form of Ma'at and Thoth. Ma'at, as I try to think about it, she represents the road upon which humanity would travel. Because Ma'at represented order, balance, justice, truth, righteousness. And Thoth, the god of wisdom, he was an architect. So he built upon the structure that Ma'at created. And she didn't just create order, she created, was at the foundation of the kinship system that developed in Egypt. So these two, Ma'at and Thoth, are pre-unification divinities. So unification and recognition of Ra Atum worship at Heliopolis produced in time the concept of a trilogy of the same deity as he transited the heavens. That is to say, in the morning he was, upon sunrise, when you see the sun rose, he was Khepri the beetle. At midday, when the sun was in all its glory, he was Ra. And at the end of the day, he was Temu or Atum. So you have 3 in 1. A good example of this is like as we approach the end of the year, you've seen images of the newborn year as a babe, and sometime around mid-summer is an adult, and by the end of where we are today, approaching the end of December, is the old man. So the same concept could be applied to an understanding of Khepri, Ra, and Atum. Narmer, who appears on the scene at about 3200 BC, it's been said that he divided prehistory from history in conquering and uniting the land and establishing the kinship of ancient Egypt. The kinship represents a continuation of the Ka, or spiritual being, of the system of government. After he had conquered and began to unite the land, he in the area to the north that was swampy, he drained the swamp and built a temple for the worship of Ptah, out of which the Memphite theology would emerge as codification of this system of worship developed. As I said, Thoth had laughed 8 times, and 8 gods appeared at Hermopolis. The 8 gods of Heliopolis, where Ra was worshipped, who were Shu and Tefnut, Geb and Nut, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, added to by Ra were the Heliopolitans 9. Ptah Memphis incorporated that system. And he said, listen, I didn't come to destroy the system, I simply came to elevate that system or reformulate that system and bring it up to a higher level. So he incorporated the initial 9. So the initial 9 deities of Heliopolis also applicated to Memphis. Later, the 8 created gods of Hermopolis were appropriated by Amun of Thebes, and they were buried at Medinet Habu, where Ramses III of the 20th dynasty has the principal temple, but in the foreground to that temple, a smaller temple was built by Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, and the 8 gods of Heliopolis were buried at a site called Gem in front of the Hatshepsut and Thutmose's temple at Medinet Habu. These 8 gods had outlived their existence, and so they were buried. And in their burying, there emerged another god called Kamutef, who is a new form of the 8, and he, fused with Amun, became the principal god of the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom. And Middle Kingdom is represented by the 11th and 12th dynasty, sometimes the 13th, but the 13th was cut short. And then the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasty, where Amun was considered king of the gods, and he reigned supreme for about 500 years. But his power and his majesty incorporated all the previous philosophic and spiritual experiences that had gone before him. So the 8 created gods at Hermopolis were appropriated by Amun of Thebes and were buried in front of Hatshepsut and Thutmose, the 3 small temple at a place called Gemi, D-J-E-M-E, from which the serpent Kamutef resurrected or emerged from these deities who had ended their time and so buried. Then Kamutef, having completed his time, was fused with Amun, who also fused with Min. So we have, the term is up my head, I'm trying to remember it, but the combining of deities, we see this throughout, where one deity assumes the power of the other. In the pyramid text, it is said of Yunus that when he went to heaven, he executed the gods of heaven, ate them, and assumed their powers. So by combining gods on earth here among us, then you assume or appropriated their powers. We must consider the Theban theologians. You see, the whole thing is that there was a time right here where it was said that a number of things. One, in sports, the blacks could only run the 100-yard dash. They couldn't run the marathon. And last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever, that theme already destroyed, but was reinforced when the Kenyans, male and female, swept. And then there was another theory about back in the 80s, I think, when it was said this guy named Morgan Worley had published this article entitled "The Ice Have It," and he was saying that the greatest players were Pete Rose in baseball and Joe Namath in football, and they were essentially blue-eyed people. And there were two calculus by which measurement of fame was utilized. And he said that especially in the football arena, there were self-paced and reactive tasks. So the quarterback initiates self-paced action by throwing the ball, and the black receivers are reactive in catching the ball and running to it. So the argument is that, you see, blacks can't win the Super Bowl. So we had Doug Williams out of Washington. At the time, they were called the Redskins, and somehow we had this image has been cemented in my memory of this guy John Elway, full of teeth, you know, and he came out laughing at this Super Bowl event. He says, you know, I'm gonna just tear this guy apart. And Doug Williams, the quarterback, the black quarterback for Washington, demolished him. I think he beat him by 42-7. Okay, and so we said that that whole notion of the black scare won the Super Bowl. I think either last year or this year, I don't really follow it that much. About 10 of the starting quarterbacks of the various teams were blacks. So, you know, so as it relates to this ancient history, and keep in mind that the Greeks were the greatest. I mean, but as George G.M. said, what they knew was stolen legacy, right? Up until, let's say, even 1900, 1950, most books on Western civilization began with the Greeks. But after it became apparent that blacks had played a significant role because of the significance of Egypt, these people then incorporated or expropriated a false notion that the Egyptians were Caucasians. And so most books today on Western civilization begins with a chapter on the Egyptians, where prior their books began with a chapter on the Greeks. I remember when I was at Hunter College, and I had found in my research this argument. It was an article that was in the Journal of the Anthropological Institute, and I foolishly informed my professor, and he was really fascinated, and it was entitled "A Race of Red Men Living in North Africa." So the argument was that the Egyptians were red men until they became white men. All right? I mean, so, you know, in 1974, Dr. Diop and Theophilus Benga were the principal specialists at the 1974 conference on the peopling of the Nile Valley in Cairo. And this is a part, the report is a part of UNESCO's Volume 2 on the history of ancient Africa. All right? And it said that these two people were the best prepared of all the scholars who were there. And they were able to show that, in fact, across Africa, the Africans are of various complexions, right? On the Mediterranean coast, there are light-colored Africans because of their interaction with the outer bank of the Mediterranean. So you have the whites in the north. Keep in mind, and I've mentioned this before, in 1905, this guy, Randall McIver, he wrote this article, actually wrote a book called Eureka. And one of the arguments that he made is that there were two races of people occupying Egypt. In the north, there were whites, and in the south, there were blacks. He got a lot of pushback for even giving blacks some credit. Keep in mind, and I'm coming to this, that when we come to the great glory of Egypt, the 18th dynasty, the New Kingdom, Sir Flinders Petrie did a lot of work. He's considered the father of Egyptian archaeology. He said of the 17th dynasty, that the 17th dynasty coming from Nubia held Thebes as its capital. Evidence has shown that from the beginning of time, culture was uniform from north to south. So we hear about the melting pot, who's in the pot, but we also know that there is an element stirring the pot. So in essence then, the blacks were stirring the pot that was supposed to be a melting pot. And we cannot deny that, there were whites in Egypt, but they were not the rulers. They were not the principals. Dr. Jacob Carruthers says, and it's in my notes, that in decrying the falsity of the evidence that's presented, has argued that the Asian civilization was a mixture of people, but they're still considered Asians. The Greeks and the Romans were also a mixture of peoples, but they're still considered Greek and Roman civilization. So if in Africa there is a mixture of people, it has to be an African civilization. Okay? So, so that I know I stay with my topic, I just needed that sort of like as a precursor to where we're going. I do want to point out, however, that among the principal divinities that are responsible for theology, creation, religion, and what have you, we have Amun, Min, Ptah, Ra, Amenemopet. These were all black gods. Okay? This is how the Theban theologians saw this. You see, so the thing is that they want to only give Europeans credit for being thinkers. But before there was the European, there was the African thinker who, whether he was under the tree of she was at Semitep, the lady, the principal, she always talked about under the baobab tree where the Africans would sit in big shade and, you know, philosophize, whether it's religious or cosmic or whatever. So the Africans were in fact thinking, and they weren't waiting for the arrival of the European. In fact, Africa before the white man is not 1900 AD, but before 1900 BC. And we have to understand that, and our young scholars and individuals who can be instructed must know their history. Much of what the Marquis History Club does is to make you aware. But of course, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. Now, Teddy Kubia will say, but if you work that animal, he's going to get thirsty, and then he's going to want to drink. But if you say, well, listen, there's a river over there, go and drink some water, he ain't doing it. Okay? I mean, rather than shopping for books on Amazon for this Christmas season, most people are shopping for sneakers because, you know, the foot is more important than the brain, the head. Anyway, that's for another argument. Okay, so as I said, this is the Theban or black theologians were at work constructing the philosophic, cosmological, theological creation of how things began. A few instances of promoted, nevertheless, a few instances of promoted falsity that's never really commented on in correction. For as Dr. Leonard James, that was my mentor, often reminded, the existential data contradicts the symbolic representation. So the false guy, somebody talk about the guy behind the curtain, is not the man who you see outside. So Dr. James had said that the evidence contradicts what they teach us about. Okay? For example, the two Tutankhamun statues were first described as guards. I mean, you know, blacks are often seen as soldiers for the other man, right? For the royal internment of the boy king. However, in close inspection, they were determined to be clothed in royal attire. You don't clothe in royal attire guards, okay? The notion of, again, in a continuation of this falsity, the notion of painted black for the funerary ceremony. Well, these two black statues were painted black because of the ceremony preparing them for the afterlife. It became a standard and regular refrain. Now, if King Tut intended to spend an eternity in the afterlife, why should he choose to be represented as other than he was? I mean, you know, let me explain that further, right? Now, if I were a black guy and I'm heading to meet my ancestors in the Black Pantheon or whatever, I mean, why would I want to be painted white? So, he is what he was. A black kid. Some of you may be old enough to remember the 1976 bicentennial period where there was a Tut exhibit in New York, in the United States, in New York and several other cities. And then blacks were now getting their act together in terms of you know, understanding what is at stake. The promoters foisted an alabaster image of the boy king. And given that alabaster is a white material, everyone says, see, the king is white. Now, the interesting thing is that young black kids who were at the other end of the spectrum, at the end of the world, only saw the alabaster image of the king and never came to realize that the boy king was actually someone who looked like them. It was a big con job. Okay. So the next U.S. exhibit, because of pressure from people like the blacks of Detroit, and they get special recognition. That's where Malcolm laid it all down. Right? The next U.S. exhibition featured a brown Tut head coming out of the lotus flower. In 2008, I go to Egypt regularly. Right? In 2008, an Egyptian guide. I was within sight, within hearing distance of an Egyptian guide who said to a tourist, even though the king looks black, he's not Nubian. So what he's doing, he's admitting that the boy king was black. He's coming into the back door, right? Then again, in 2005, when I was there with my niece, earlier, in the museum, the same museum, a young female guide. You see, Dr. Ben used to say that don't believe anything the guide said. 60% of what they teach you is wrong because they don't know nothing. They by going to the museum every day, they can tell you this is a pole, this is a column, this is a statue. But in terms of reading a book or what have you, they don't do that. They would, in order to enter the museum as a guide, you got to have a license. So I would go and borrow my brother's license, my cousin's license. I show this to the guard, and I go in as a guide. So you got to be careful of what they tell you, right? So this young woman said to me, I've never seen Osiris painted black. I said, you crazy or what? Where you learn this? She said, oh, my professor at the University of American University in Cairo taught me such. Okay, the American University in Cairo Press, they publish a lot of important work, but they need to be aware that what is being spewed in their name is falsity. After all, okay? After all, one of the instructions that Dr. Ben gave me, he said, Monderson, he told me 3 things, right? He said, look, first, he said, when doing research in ancient Egypt, get the oldest material you can find. So, Dr. Leonard Monroe from Detroit coined the phrase, well, for my area of specialty is 1870 to 1925. And this is the period in which the great body of work was done in reclaiming or excavating the ancient knowledge. So Dr. Monroe called it the ancient records of the ancient records. That Mentuhotep II, the founder of the 11th dynasty and the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, his tomb was discovered in 1898. He also built the mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, where Hatshepsut later built her temple. And his statue was in the museum from that time onward. In 1959, W. Stevenson Smith, in The Art and Architecture of Ancient Egypt, wrote that Mentuhotep had black flesh. Now consider all the great Egyptologists, let's say even from 1900 to 1959, none of them ever mentioned this. So what does that tell you? That all of their work is suspect. That's not to say that they didn't do good work, but you cannot consume 100% of everything that they said, because much of it is twisted to fit a particular narrative. Okay? So, so I said that the American University in Cairo Press, as I said, published a lot of important work, but some of the books that they publish are described as not for sale outside of the Middle East because they want a particular narrative to be promoted in the Middle East that the people over there who don't, and especially many of the ill-informed European visitors are not told the right story. Of course, they don't deal with us over here because we're the cream of the intellectual crop. Okay. So some of the books that they promote is not altogether correct. I did mention that Philemus Petrie, the father of Egyptian archaeology, explained. Okay. Egyptian history essentially begins at 3200 BC. That time frame has been whittled down to 3000 and to some extent 2950. Nevertheless, Narmer led an armada. Dr. Diop says that Narmer was a Theban, Thebes, from the south of Egypt. Remember, Ronald McIver said that there were two people living in Egypt, whites in the north, blacks in the south, where I told you about the black theologians that constructed all of these creation myths. Okay, he led an armada from that began at Abydos, but Dr. Diop says that he was Theban, right? He was from Thebes. So Philemus Petrie says the 17th dynasty coming from Nubia held Thebes as its capital. Perhaps that is why Thebes, the Egyptian name was called Waset, the scepter. They were called, the area was described as the fighting province. Okay? Now, if they were coming from Nubia, it meant that they had to be black. I mean, seriously. I mean, the farther south you go, is the blacker the people were. The name of the restaurant where we used to go first at Aswan has been the Africans on Elephantine Island. The Africans were kicked off of the island, and a new hotel was built there by they have a new name called Moving Pick. But the previous restaurant, they had all the gods. These are the Nubians from the south of Egypt. They painted their gods black, their kings and their gods. Okay, so which means that this is what they recognize. Okay, now if the 17th dynasty coming from Nubia, it had to be black. Okay, now the 17th dynasty was the dynasty that kicked out the Hyksos invaders and launched the new kingdom, the 18th dynasty. Manetho is a Greek priest, a 2nd century BC, who wrote a history of Egypt using insider information from Theban library, from priestly sources. He created what's called the dynasties. When it came to the 17th dynasty that Petrie said came from Nubia, he made a distinction between the 17th and the 18th dynasty, which in fact the 17th and the 18th should be one dynasty, but because of the significance of the expelling of the Hyksos invaders and the establishment of the new kingdom, he created two dynasties. So it's the same people. But keep in mind again that from the time of Narmer, which is the beginning of history, there was a uniformity of culture. The Europeans didn't come in until much, much later. Dr. Benelisa always said that the first European of any significance was the Hyksos, who came in at the 15th and 16th dynasty, and they were kicked out by the 17th dynasty that launched the new kingdom. Okay? So as to the young lady who told me that she never saw Osiris painted black, One of the first things I do, every time I go to Egypt, I go to Cairo Museum, I go to the room where there are papyrus on the walls. Before I do that, let me say this, right? So I talked about Thebes, the home of Narmer, Mentuhotep, and the great Middle and New Kingdom dynasties. Dr. Petrie, who said that about the father of Egyptian archaeology, who spoke of the 17th dynasty coming from Nubia, held Thebes as its capital. Of course, he also spoke about Ahmes Nefertari. Ahmes Nefertari was the wife of the guy who of the 17th dynasty, who led the expulsion of the Hyksos and founded the 18th dynasty and the New Kingdom. He was married to his sister, and who was his wife. They produced a son named Amenhotep I. So Petrie says of this black queen goddess that she was the most venerated person in all of ancient Egyptian history. Susan Mubarak, she was the wife of Hosni Mubarak, who was deposed a few years back, and she was writing an introduction to a book. I don't remember the name. I can't remember it offhand. And she said that this black goddess, she had her own temple, and her son, they were both worshipped at Thebes, right? That she was, her color, black color, was because of her Osirization. That is to say, because she was going to meet Osiris, she was now colored black, which is a part of the whole falsity narrative that we've got to wade through all this SB, you know what I mean, backwards, in order to get at the truth and promote right, correct information for our young so that they will not continue to be misled, not because it is in a book, it's correct. We've got to learn, and here's my reading strategy, is designed to cultivate intellectual autonomy in the young mind so as to be able to decode the environment. Everything you read has to be read in a critical format so that you understand that they're not, as my moms used to say, they're not giving you a 6 for a 9. Okay, it's backwards, but still, the 6 is less than the 9 anyway, right? But so you got to learn how to either do the research on your own or look to credible people. I'm not talking about all these charlatans that are out there telling, we carrying people to Egypt and all that. That's nonsense. You gotta. When I was young, when I was young, I hung with older men so that their wisdom instructed me. Okay, why? Because they lived it. They had experience, and they were willing. I mean, listen, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Dr. Leonard James. These are even Len Jeffries. I mean, so I learned from the elders who knew what was correct. So again, that's part of the Osirification of Ahmes Nefertari is a part of the painted black for the funerary ceremony falsity. Okay, as I said once, when I go there, I photograph these images on the wall, and contrary to what the young lady said, there are a number of images where surviving images where, or surviving images that are on display. Keep in mind, okay, keep in mind that there's a lot of stuff under the basement, okay? Take for example, with the construction of the Aswan High Dam, a lot of the Nubian culture was going to be subsumed by Lake Nasser. So UNESCO appealed to nations that had a history of archaeology in Egypt to help in a Nubian rescue. And some of the other nations sent teams, and the United States sent a team from the University of Chicago on the auspices of Keith Seele, S-E-E-L-E. And they made a significant discovery. Rather than reveal it, they hid it in the basement. And in 1978, Bruce Williams, a graduate student doing what I call mining the basement, discovered that the earliest form of the monarchy throughout the world was in Nubia. And the New York Times in March 1, 1978 published that article, front page saying, world's earliest monarchy found in Nubia. So my point is that we don't know what's downstairs. Anyway, on the wall there was a number of images of Osiris, the great black, painted black. I didn't mention that Ra, Ptah, Ma'at, Isis, Osiris, evil men were blacks. They ruled in Upper Egypt. There was nothing going on at the bottom where the Mediterranean is, where they could potentially come into contact with Europeans. Okay. I wanted to say to Brother Ray that an upcoming lecture that I wanted to do has to do with festival. Okay, the festival of men. Men was this incorporated black god that was similar to Amun. So he is a guy who has seen the fusing of Amun with his alter ego with the projected creative organ seen in several places. His festival survives at Medinet Habu, the temple of Ramses III of the 20th dynasty. Right. And in the festival, where the god comes out to meet the king, and the king goes through this transformation with the help of the god to be reborn into the system of kingship. And in the procession, the lead priest is said to be reading the book of the Negro. Now, this is an important festival for an important god. So why would the chief priest be reading? Why would the chief priest be reading the book of the Negro as the principal document that officiates throughout the ceremony? Now, I've said a lot about Shwala de Lubis. He was the guy who stood there and said, in essence, that, why is the Negro leading this procession? Go further. So, okay. Now, let's review, okay? Let's do a little review here. Now, after the Neolithic, okay, you got to be careful about the dates because, again, when I said that Africa before the white man is not 1950, 1900 AD, but 1900 BC, but there's a tremendous number of things that was taking place before that period. I mean, I may have mentioned here before the invention, let's forget about Zanzibar's Boise and Handa's culture, and then the development of tools to set the regular pattern and all of that, right? But there was discovery of what appears to be a carpentry structure, right? Two pieces of wood put together in the manner that a carpenter would do, and it was dated at 500,000. So when some young person in the audience was amazed that I said that the church had talked about the religious experiences of these Africans of 300,000. He was fascinated, and you know. But even if we go back to the precession of 26,000, Dr. Monroe said that in order to measure a precession, one precession, you have to have two. Charles Finch, in 2010, I met Charles Finch and asked him about it. He said in essence there were four. So 26, 52, 78, 104,000 years of African stargazing. He had a book called Stars of Deep Beginning, right? And then of course, in 2012, the Times published again another front page article on the discovery of a paint factory with red paint and brush. Alright, and if you could conceive of the paint pot like this, and then you construct a guy around, there was some years ago, a couple went to see an architect, and they brought a bathroom faucet. And they tell him, listen, I want you to build a house around this faucet. So, I mean, can you imagine the concept of
Building a house.
Okay, so use that same analogy in understanding that here is a paint pot with red paint and a brush, and construct a man holding the paint pot as an artist and getting ready to make a palette to put his work on the wall, right? And that's been dated at 107,000, right? It's been said that there was evidence of this type of art at 150,000, but they didn't have the paint. Now, Mary Leakey, wife of Louis Leakey, who discovers the Zanzibar's Boise dated 1.75 million, she did a study from South Africa all the way up to the Horn of Africa and discovered some 2,500 sites where they were using the predominant red color as a form of painting, art. So that the whole idea that the Egyptians were red people was a cultural thing. Wow. You see, because Dr. Ben said that the Nubians painted their young brides red with the henna plant. Okay? So what we have is that the black people, what has survived of the black color of any image is actual, whereas the red color is cultural, because again those same papyrus on the walls of that particular room at the Cairo Museum I've seen young white ladies in adoration before Osiris. They're painted white. So what does that tell you? That's their actual color. Okay, so the black, the actual color of the black is what it is. And if we accept then discount the whole notion that the Tutankhamun statues are painted black for the funerary ceremony, then how come it's only two people? He's the only one in heaven or wherever painted black, everybody else. So you gotta sort all of this out so that you get a better understanding of how the history has been falsely presented. Okay, so in my review, I'm saying that after the Neolithic Revolution, that is anywhere from the Epi-Paleolithic is about 25,000, and the Neolithic Revolution was about between 10 and 8,000 BC. Right. That is the transition from hunting and gathering to sedentary rather than nomadic living. And so women were instrumental in developing agriculture while the men were away hunting. This form of existence entailed men hunt and women gather food supplies. That is, while strange, but as men hunted, women actually developed or invented agriculture by throwing out seeds of plant-based sources of their gathering. And they were surprised, hey, it grew. And over time, they became systematic so that this here, it challenges the whole notion that agriculture developed in Southwest Asia in 8000 BC and it spread to Egypt in 4500 and then in ascending the Nile, again against the flow of the river. Okay, the river runs from south to north, so in ascending the Nile, agriculture came into Africa and then spread to different places. That's not true, because again, the New York Times is the paper of record. Okay, I showed my daughter one day some old New York Times. She said, "Oh, that's old." I said, "Yeah, that's history."
It's
right?
true.
In 1972, I think. The Times, when I was at Hunter, the Times had an article about iron ore mine found in South Africa. And I asked Professor Clark about it. And he said, oh, they were mining hematite. And he said, Professor Clark said that, well, if they were mining hematite at 4200 4200 BP, which means it's before present. That is to say, if you subtract the 2,000 years of our era, and it goes back to instead of 41,000 BC. He said that if they were mining iron ore at that early stage, it meant that they had a large population, and having a large population required that they practice agriculture. Nature, Science published an article in early 80s that showed that between 16,500 and 14,500 Africans were farming on the Nile River. And about 1,200, again BC we're talking, about 12,000 modern archaeologists discovered what are called mealing holes in the rock where you place the wheat with a mortar and you separate the wheat from the fruit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the whole notion of agriculture is really African. This the president of UNIA, he was at Cemetery, and he reminded us that Marcus Garvey, well, besides him saying this, which was recent, Marcus Garvey had met this guy named Douz Mohammed in England in 1914. And Dulce Muhammad was telling him how Egypt was a black civilization. So Marcus Garvey, from Dulce Muhammad, he learned that the Fertile Crescent didn't begin in Southwest Asia and curve into Africa, but in reverse began on the Nile River where food was abundant. You know, corn in Egypt, yeah, you ever heard that? It's biblical. It curved northward and southward, northward, and this is not talked about too often. Okay. Okay, so the women invented agriculture.
The agriculture then went from south to north.
Well, no. What I'm saying is that women, by accident, threw out the remains of their food, and then they found that it grew, and then they started to do it in a more systematic manner, and then they were generally camped by some water source, whether it's the river or lake or whatever, and then animals would come and feed from their either drink the water or to feed from the refuse that they threw out, and they ultimately began to domesticate or tame these animals, so that ultimately this is how wild animals became quote-unquote friends of man. Right? But women were instrumental in, there was a time when women ruled, but they were overthrown by men, and thus we get, but the Egyptian and Africa, that's what Diop's two-cradle theory is about. The Europeans were paternalists, whereas the Africans were maternalists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Women for Africa.
Yeah.
And men for Europeans.
Yeah. So
that's interesting about the food growing and the animals being domesticated.
well, in this civilization, in this cultural explosion from the Neolithic period in which you have surplus food, man moved from being sedentary, being nomadic, walking around, to being sedentary, staying in one place, and they began to more or less inhabit shelter, which is caves.
Which created communities as opposed
the community, right? So what would happen is that at the end of the day, after they hunt or gather or whatever, they would sit by the fireside, and they would either repair their tools or their weapons or whatever, and plan for the next day. So that as the community began to grow, they set up what we call sites. So you had sites where they made tools. They had sites where they buried their dead. There are sites where they perform. It's like having a big house, not in the same.
They organize communities.
It could be, but it's like having a big house with a lot of rooms, so different functions will take place. So that's in this process,
That's how the cities began.
men began to philosophize and ask questions. This is where in the division of labor, you see, men with brains went over here, there are others that didn't went over there, did the hunting, the fighting, or whatever. So the thinkers would ultimately become the theologians who would construct the religious beliefs as they came to practice such. Okay.
Like community leaders, sort of.
Yeah. So in this process of philosophizing, they began to ask questions, and they looked at the heavens, and because the heavens was so amazing, they considered it to be a god. Okay. And then now, well, the face of the heavens, we see day and night. Day the sun is up, night, the moon is up, so they gave two eyes to the heavens. One, the right eye would be the sun, and the left eye would be, so that's how we get the two eyes of Horus. Right? Horus was an ancient god. Now, he is not, okay, there are two Horus figures, right? One of the Horus was a foundation god, and why he became revered is because he personified a falcon, and he, like the sun, could traverse the heavens. He could fly. So he was a part of the construction of the pre-creation concept of how things would evolve. Of course, you remember I mentioned that Seti I made a temple at Abydos to Osiris, and it had 7 divinities: Isis, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. That was the son of that couple. Right? So he's a later Horus. But the first Horus that I'm talking about, he is worshipped today at a place called Komambo, which is a double temple between the god Sobek, the crocodile god, and Horus, the elder Horus, or Horus. Okay. So the two eyes of Horus emerged from the sun and moon. But keep in mind that oftentimes you see in the image, whether it's in the papyrus or whatever, you often see the right side, which is the sun, representative of the sun. This is all part of the old Egyptian sky religion. You see, the sky religion emerged, there were 3 realms really. The sky or the heavens, the terrestrial area, and the underworld, where, after you die, where you go. And there was always this conflict whether people went to heaven or whether they went to
Hell.
not hell. It's not as how we see it, right? Because the conflict is, even if you go into heaven, your body had to be placed in the earth. So how do we reconcile these two? So the question is, that's why I mentioned that in the Old Kingdom, Ra and Osiris wrestled for leadership, and Ra and Osiris won, and then he incorporated Ra in his worship, so that Ra was a celestial god, and Osiris was a terrestrial underworld god. So at the end of the day, okay, in the morning, the Kepri, the beetle, emerged on the horizon, traversed the heavens. At midday, it was Ra in all his glory. And at evening time, he became Tem, the old man. Remember I talked about it? Okay, so in order to arrive back on the eastern horizon, he had to traverse the underworld, where Osiris was king. So they worked out something, He said that, okay, I'm going to traverse your environment, and I will, for 2 hours, I will shine my rays onto the worthy dead, the worthy dead that was in your kingdom. Not everybody down there was worthy. Dr. Quran's like to talk about Markeru, that is, say, true of voice. At the judgment, if you're not true of voice, you're not going to be able to exist in the environment of Osiris, that place of purity and everlastingness and stuff like that. So they worked that out, the two of them, Ra and Osiris. Okay, so we come to Heliopolis where raw atum worship was practiced, but Mart, I mentioned this prior, Mart and Thoth were preceded because they were foundation gods, and Ra and Atum came about as a result of their work. Thoth was the mathematician and the architect who assisted Ptah in construction of the heavens, built upon Mart. Mart, the personification. So, like Mart was the table, and Thoth built the heavens over the table. Mart, he was the mathematician and architect, and she was the personification of balance, order, goodness, truth, justice, righteousness. Thus, Mart as a principle endowed Ra with the attributes of righteousness. So Mart gave Ra the seed of righteousness, and he became the God of righteousness, the embodiment of righteousness. But again, I'm not arguing this, but look at the role of a woman giving man power. This is what she actually did. So he was considered the king of righteousness, the first king of Egypt, and so laid the foundation for order and truth. So much so, by the time of the Old Kingdom, kings affixed Ra's name to theirs to signify their embodiment of the idea of righteousness, balance, and things of this nature, rightness. Because of this pre-unification existence, Ra became embodied in Atum, and so he is represented as Ra Atum. The same individual in two forms worship at Heliopolis, so named by the Greeks, but the Africans call An. The Bible says Anu, something like that. Who, in according to Amelino, he was a French Egyptologist at the start of the 20th century, that these Anu black people of Nubia sailed down the Nile. Okay, it's easier to sail down the Nile than to sail up the Nile, right? Founding cities such as Ermont, Esna, and ultimately Heliopolis.
Professor, how could they sail down if that now is actually going up? I mean, how do you do that?
No. They said who?
You said
No, the Africans sailed down the Nile.
the Nile, you said, went from south to north, right?
They sailed the Nile. Yeah, they
So how you gonna sail down if it's going from south?
No. The Europeans ascended the Nile from north to south. The Africans sailed down the Nile from south to north. You see, this is, I mentioned this prior.
From south to north, because they are sail. Okay.
We have been indoctrinated to see directional orientation as being north, south, east, west.
Exactly.
It's not north, south, east, west. Even in the coronation, right? The coronation of the king, when he succeeds to the throne, he releases 4 birds to go to the 4 corners of the world to establish or to announce that a new king has been enthroned. He goes south, then north, not north and south. It's just like how they tell us red, white, and blue. It's not red, white, and blue. It's white resting on red with blue stripes. Okay? We got our flag is red, white, and blue, and the British, and the Canadian, the Australian. They got the whole thing backwards.
So you're saying this is what has evolved with time?
No, this is what is implemented, and subsequent generations follow. Because the Africans weren't Muslim in the time of Ghana, but the Muslims who crossed the desert and attacked Ghana because of their gold, they say Islam and that. Well, the leaders of that time say, okay, so you come 200 years later, I say, no, my religion is not your original religion. It was forced upon you. Just like how a lot of the, when you re-examine the information, Dr. James said the existential data contradicts the symbolic representation. That is to say, what they're telling you is not the truth. Right? And we got to see it today. I'm not going to get into that. Okay, so I mentioned Wallace Budge, and he had this book called From Fetish to God in Ancient Egypt, 1934. He said that the foundation of the popular opinion about the religious beliefs of the ancient Egyptians was laid by the great pioneer of Egyptology, E. de Rouge, about the middle of the 19th century. He stated that the Egyptians believed in one self-existent, supreme, or eternal, almighty God who created the world and everything in it, and endowed man with an immortal soul which was capable of receiving punishments and rewards. De Rouge's words were, to all intents and purposes, a paraphrase of Newton's Principia. Newton was a middle-aged European philosopher, in which the great scientist expressed his belief in the unity of the God who is supreme, infinite, omnipotent, omniscient, and absolutely perfect, who is present always and everywhere. The various works of creation are the product of his ideas, and his existence is proclaimed by them. Quote unquote. As such, we see the primacy of religious beliefs influenced other nations, and that, quote unquote again, the God of the Hebrews had much in common, and that Egyptian religion was closely akin to Christianity. This is why I don't want to call this guy's name, but he makes this big thing about Christianity, Egypt as the foundation of Christianity. Don't take any pictures of my images. That oneness of God recognized as monotheism is affirmed in the Westminster Catechism. For, as Wallace Budge says, he elucidates, the attributes of God are enumerated together with Bible references as authorities. Thus we have his God, our description of God. His infinite is his infinity in Exodus 3:14, Job 11:7, glory, Acts 7:2, blessedness, 1 Timothy 6:15, perfection in Matthew 5:48, all sufficiency in Genesis 17:1, is eternity in Psalms 92. When I said 92, I mean book 90,
Psalms
verse 2. Right? Unchangeableness in Malachi 3:6. Incomprehensibility, 1 Kings 8:27. In his ubiquity in Psalms 99. Kings also in Kings 8:27. Ubiquity is Psalms 99, 1-13. Almightiness in Revelations 4:8. Omniscience in Hebrews 4:13. His wisdom in Romans 16:27. His holiness in Isaiah 5:24. Justice in Deuteronomy 34:4. Mercy and graciousness, Exodus 34:6. Unity, Deuteronomy 6:4 and Corinthians 8:4. Equally, the great hymn to Ptah at Berlin shows that the same attributes were also attributed to Ptah. That is, the one God of Egypt. The origin of this belief and practice as aspects and attributes apply to Amun, Amun-Ra. We talked about Ra and Atum, and we talked about Ptah, and we talked about Thoth and Ma'at. Okay, so now we come to Atum. Amun. Amun was the god of the 17th dynasty again, coming from Nubia, held Thebes as his capital, and they ended up establishing first the Middle Kingdom and then finally the New Kingdom. And they attributed their success to Amun, and Amun was a black god, and he was akin to Min, who was in a nearby location, and the Theban theologians fused the two of them, so you have Amun-Ban, Amun-Min, Amun-Ra-Min, okay, which is somewhat different to the trilogy of a divine spirit, where Ra is his face, Ptah is his body, and Amun is his incomprehensibility. So you have the same thing. Remember that we talked about Ra as Kepri in the morning, Ra at noon, and Atum in the evening. Now we have a different concept of Ra being the face of this triune God. Ptah is his body, and Amun is the theoretical construct of this unity of the three. So he is so incomprehensible that you don't even bother. And he wore feathers. And we only knew he was in the vicinity when the wind blew and you hear the feathers rattling, and you know that the God was in the vicinity. Now, it's interesting because Ra and Ptah worship was a kind of intellectual religious system. Osiris was a god of the dead, but Amun was a god of the poor. You see, the poor was always left out of everything. And poor people could now appeal to the god, and there are certain temples, especially like at Kumango, where they are in the back, in the corridor on the back wall. There's a hole, sort of, and there are ears where the people can go and speak to the god. Well, actually, there is a priest inside there listening to hear the petitions, you know.
Like the Catholic Church.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, when you go and you do the confession, right? And the guy sitting inside, right? But so all of this goes to Amun, because Amun listened to the petitions of the poor, and then with that you have a different side to the whole religious view, because the poor was not to be. You see, today, certainly when I was in college, the whole notion of the high church and the low church. I'm sure you probably, the high church is a cathedral, and you go in there sometimes you could fall asleep with the preaching or what have you. But in the low church, the storehouse, the storefront and all that, they bang in and all kinds of people dancing and speaking, and everybody's involved. So in a way, the Ra Ptah worship is like quote unquote the cathedral, and the low church, when I say low, I mean, you know, the church of the people. Every block you got him. So he was the people's God, and he answered their prayers. And then oftentimes when there's a procession from, let's say, from one temple to the other one, and especially I wanted to mention to Brother Ray that if I'm permitted to come back again, then I wanted to talk about festival, because festival was an important part of the overall religious experience. A number of different festivals throughout the year. So that would probably be my next topic if, you know, if and when I come back, perhaps next year.
One of those religious festivals?
Yes, yes, yes. The Opeth Festival, the Festival of Men, the Valley Festival, the Festival of the New Year. So combine, you see Dr. Ben, when he used to say, let's do festival. Okay, so 90, Dr. Ben said, okay, we come back next year and we want to have festival. Right? And he would bring in these Nubian singers and dancers and whatever, and have everybody dress up in African. There was a travel agent on Nostrand Avenue that was handling his trips, but because Dr. Ben was becoming too big, working through.
Too many people was going over there.
No, not so much too many people were going, but he was working through Daboud. Daboud, village of Daboud was the center of the resistance, because when Lake Nasser, when the high dam was created, and Lake Nasser, remember I told you that the UNESCO Nubian rescue, because a number of African Nubian temples were going to be lost and what have you. So those populations were distributed. They lost their traditional grounds, right? So Daboud was the center of the resistance of the dispersion of the Nubian people. You see, it's between Luxor and Aswan. So one day, back in the earliest 80s, Dr. Ben was taking a busload of people, and the bus broke down. So everybody got off the bus, and they didn't know what to do. And it happened in front of this village called Daboud. And these people, they'd never seen black people before, or Nubian Americans. So they came out to say, hey, brother! And, you know, they brought water and this and that, and there was a mechanic.
Right.
There was a mechanic in the village that helped to fix the bus. So every time the Dr. Ben would go, he would say, okay, let's bring stuff for the Nubians. And he would encourage people to bring new things, you know. If you bring clothing, let's suppose you brought, you know, for men, the packet of underwear. Not used underwear, but in the packet. Or then he said, bring medicine, bring school supplies for the children and what have you. Okay, and then now he would, Dr. Ben never, once you paid for the trip, he never asked you for anything, all right? But when we got to the village, he would say, let's make a donation to the people. And whatever they take, he would double it and give it to the leader of that village. And he also, this is in, okay, Sonata TV with Brother Reggie did an interview of me on the legacy of Dr. Ben. And it's up there in, on the Sonata TV, right. Okay, so one year they tried to derail him. Two things happened. These people, they must have, as you say, drink the Kool-Aid, and that pen was getting too big. So now when everybody came and they brought some doctors and what have you, and they brought medicine and all that, Dr. Ben did two things. One, he adopted two young women, and one of them is on my book, the cover of my book. The two of them are my book celebrating Dr. Ben Johanna. He put two of them through college. One became a doctor, and she came back to him. He established a school and a hospital. Right? So there were some Egyptian doctors that were manning the hospital. So every time Dr. Ben come through, the medicine was handed over to these people, but they had scurrilous intentions. Okay, so this one time now, Dr. Ben said, well, he wanted to show the people the hospital that was administering to the village. Right? Again, the village was the center of the resistance. So whatever was brought out, whether supplies for the school children, these people would now share it out and say, when we go to the hospital,
Let me get you some tea.
the hospital was filthy.
Thank you.
The hospital was filthy. In the basement, you can see old blood, this, that.
This was in Africa?
Yeah, in Dabu village. So all of a sudden, you know, the man was crying. There was a Marine with us. He said, "My friend, I left my camera back on the table." And he said, "If you only had your camera, that would have been a wonderful fundraising source, you know." But from that, everything sort of, went downhill. Right? But Dr. Ben was a powerful source, a force in Egypt. And he was getting too big for his britches. So they had to pay him down. Right? But
You mean the people in Egypt?
yeah, the powers that be. Okay? Because he was united. He was supporting the resistance to the people who were complaining about the dispersion of their culture.
Were they Arabs?
Yes, the Egyptian. Okay, a couple of people actually brought Dr. Ben through. Right? One of them was Abu Naga, Shawki Abdel Radi, and what's his name? Farouk. Right? Farouk used to say, the high dam destroyed the African culture. So the people who were living in that area before the Lake Nasser began to consume, to corral the water. Those people were moved, so they were moved off of their traditional grounds. And it's only Daboud remained, but Daboud now, that then became the cultural center and the center of the resistance.
Was it by nature, the water?
No, they built,
they built something.
Okay, in 1902, the British built the lowdown to conserve some of the water. Remember now, we're in a desert country, right? But as the population expanded, by the 1960, there was need for electrical potential. So they decided they were going to erect a high dam, right? A high dam that would ultimately give electricity to power much of the land to the south, to be able to reclaim a lot of the land for agricultural purposes, and then to accommodate the expanding population and what have you. Two things have resulted as a result. Prior to the dam, the inundation, the overflowing of the banks of the river covered the land, and it deposited a kind of fertilizer that enabled the farmers to produce bountiful crops. Now, which is a natural thing, and this goes to the whole idea of creation, because as the water began to recede, this is how the theologians construct.
How many times a year did that happen?
Once, for about 3 months, from September to December, and then the water is the Egyptian calendar. Well, Egypt had 4 calendars. I'm not getting that, but the Egyptian farmer's calendar was divided into 3 seasons of 4 months each. Each month was 30 days, so their year was 360 days, which was really short or whatever. The solar year was 365, and the lunar year 354, the Muslims celebrate the lunar year. The religious year, the farmer's year, and the solar year. Right? The solar year, that is to say, the mathematicians would study the duration of the year. And if we say, as an example, when the water recedes and we come back around, the water rises to a certain level, you're able to plot the duration of the year. So, at a certain time, we find that it's only 360 days. Right? So the theologians created the 5 epaginal days. And they determined that these were the days in which the 5 gods were born. Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus. So from 360-day year, so we got to fill the three. We have the 354-day year. We have the 360-day year. We have the 365-day year and 365-and-a-quarter-day year. All right. So when Julius Caesar went to Egypt, he introduced the 365-and-a-quarter day. What we have today is a leap year. He introduced that in Egypt. Dr. Diop showed how the lunar year, the solar year slipped back a quarter day every. So in 1460 years, they were able to readjust the calendar by adding a year to it. So over a 365-day period, the calendar lost a quarter of a day. And 1460 day, that's the rising of the star Sirius. They were able to readjust the calendar. Right? So that period, when the water begins to recede, they were able to see the emergence of land, and their theologians constructed the theory about creation. And the first mound of land that emerged is where the God now first sat and began the creation
But
process.
that's not there now, is it?
Well, the thing is that with the creation of the Aswan High Dam, remember now, when they built the dam that removed the Nubians,
Okay.
right? A lot of the Nubian lands were there. And then UNESCO appealed to nations that had a history of archaeology in Egypt. And the Americans sent this team from the University of Chicago on a Keats cellar. And they found this evidence that Ivan Van Sertima said that this guy wanted to take this secret to his grave. The secret was that kingship began in Nubia, not in Egypt. And the elements of kingship that we see in Nubia, in Egypt, we saw them at least 200-300 years prior. In Nubia. So how do we get that? This graduate student in the University of Chicago was doing what I call mining the basement. And he run upon this information. And it was published in the Times to show that the world's earliest monarchy was found in Nubia.
So what were they there when you say it was the forwards, the solar, the lunar, and what was the other one?
Muslim. You got a cover for it? Yeah, okay. So No, but the point was that with the creation of the dam, you didn't have the natural fertilizing of the land. So now, instead of natural fertilizer, they had to make fertilizer to impregnate the land so that farmers could benefit. But in the creation of the dam, they were able to acquire hydroelectric potential so that they can light the southern part of the country. Remember that a lot of the Arabic culture was in the north. Right? So the back country up south, they weren't paying attention to it now. So even during Mubarak's time, they wanted to divert the Nile to create another Nile to reclaim much more of the desert. Remember now that Egypt is 96% desert, 4% cultivable land. Right? And again, in the falsity of the presentation, they say, well, you know, black land, red land has nothing to do with the black. Okay, in the Sudan, Bilal al-Sudan is the land of the blacks. In Egypt, when they say the black land, it's not about the black people. So, but however, given that Egypt is 96% red or desert and 4% of black or cultivable land, when the king say, I give you the black land,
That's 4%.
he's not giving you 4%. He's giving you the whole country, which is the land, the country of the black people. But the tricksters confuse the issue. What did Dr. James say? The symbolic representation, the existential data contradict the symbolic representation. So what they're telling us is not the right thing. You know, I mean, look at that. We're showing all these books which is exposing the falsity that's presented, that unless you're delving into this thing here, just searching for knowledge, you'll be living in a cocoon over there, and you don't know what's going on, and you getting along, but not even realizing that, you know,
It's not true.
that not only that you're enslaved and not knowing it. It's bad enough to know when you're enslaved, but when you don't know that you're enslaved, it's even worse. So, oh boy. Okay, family relations was significant in Egyptian cosmology and kingship. First, kingship was sustained through a father and son relationship. That is to say, succession within the kingship system was enhanced by a father and son relationship where the son succeeded his father in a system of continuity. In order for the system to be viable, then I have to have a son to take over when my time is ended. And this is what the royal car, the spirit of that began from the beginning, is a metaphysical spiritual concept that runs right through, and you got to have somebody to sit in the chair, so to speak. One of the problems of the reason why Egyptian civilization fell is because they didn't have vigorous rulers to continue the tradition that their ancestors had. And as a result, when the foreigners came over, they were able to easily defeat them, and then, you know,
They didn't groom nobody to continue.
there was nobody, well, yes and no, but the fact is that there was no strong, vigorous leadership to succeed and to keep the hordes at bay. So the hordes came in. You know, they used to say, the wolf heading to the door. The wolf is already in the room. If you're not careful, he's in bed with you. He's in bed with you. So they weren't able to stem the tide. But then we're talking about a period of a changing geopolitical dynamics. Those are the guys out there finally growing up, and they're challenging your hegemony. And unless you're able to resist them, first thing they do is they come in and, given that your temple and your worship, your religious beliefs was centered in the temple, the first thing that they do is attack your temple and destroy your godly image and loot whatever wealth was accumulated in that system, and therefore, we see this in Egypt at the end of the Old Kingdom, the first intermediate period. And then some of the prophets prophesied that there will come a leader who will, bring things back together. So we get Mentuhotep and then the Amenemhets of the Middle Kingdom. And then they failed. The Hyksos came in and ruled for 100 years. And then the 17th dynasty, came up with Nubia, Eltiz was his capital, ultimately on Ahmose the first, kicked out the Hyksos and founded the new kingdom. And then at the end of that, the 22nd dynasty, 23rd and 24th, we got to get the Ethiopians now, because Pianke, king of Ethiopia, saw mayhem on his northern border, and he decided that, well, listen, I got to invade Egypt, restore order over there, and thus we have the information that the Ethiopians provided that tell us much about Egypt. Again, kingship from the south, the Shabaka stone for Memphite theology, and the journey to Heliopolis so that the king can be transformed into a god. The only record that exists is the one left by Pianke, the Ethiopian. And it tells you what happened when he arrived there and he went through the process of transformation.
Who destroyed, did the Hyksos destroy the noses and the statues?
No, there's modern people did a lot of that. That is a lot of, if you go to,
21 guns to
if you go to, well, it's said that Napoleon people turned their cannons on the face of the Sphinx, but for years, travelers, you go to El Cab on the mountainside, and you go there. I have about 3 or 4 different tubes over there, and you could see the graffiti and the destruction of the images, the artwork on the walls, and people leaving their names inscribed.
The Arabs did that.
I don't think so. No. The Arabs did their own form of destruction, because in the beginning, they were using coffins for firewood. They were using bricks. Over a period of time, the bricks become friable and using like fuel and what have you. But we are talking about the graffiti of the tombs. You see, you got to understand that many of these burials were not designed to be seen by people. They were hoping that when I was buried in my tomb, it would be forever. But as modern adventurers and archaeologists and what have you begin to unearth some of these things, people saw some of these tombs were open since antiquity, time of the Greeks and Romans. So people were visiting and they left their names.
Well, Browder said in the tomb of Frakamoon that when he went down there, they first allowed him to go down there. He said the stuff that was down there that they was using the place for was disgusting. All kind of chicken boxes and human stuff down there that they...
Well, the Arabs were living in many of those tombs.
He found that last tomb.
Huh?
He found the last two and he had his daughter walk in first.
He didn't find no last one.
Well,
The Russian
found.
Russian lady found this tomb, and she went to the American authorities and said, "Well, this is a 25th dynasty tomb," and they said, "This not us. We got nothing to do with that." So she looked around and she found him, right? And he moved in. And the interesting thing is that she wrote 2 books on the discovery.
What's her name? Do you remember?
No, I got
That's another lecture.
I got it right there though, right? I got it right there. But she said that she said, I'm looking for him in the index. He's not in the index, But he ended up taking control over the excavation, and
It's by Tony Brown.
yeah, and he began this fundraising campaign. I don't want to get into all this.
Okay.
So that, but the clearance, he ended up, because she moved away, and not him, because these were black noblemen too, Karakomun and Karabashin.
That she found that had not been taken.
That, right, she found these 2, but she couldn't get the resource to excavate it.
She needed
So he moved in
and took over.
and took over, what have you, and I don't want to get into the rest of
Do
it.
you know what year it was that she found it?
Pardon?
Do you happen to remember what year it was that she discovered these tools that had not been?
I can't. I got the books.
I mean, it's like in the late 1900s, 19.
No.
Anthony Robbins alive right now. He was
I know he's alive too in the late 1900s.
This happened in the last.
I mean, not
20
1995.
Well, let me say this. This
In
is.
the last what?
Let me just give you this. Right? Let me give you
Since the
this.
year
Right?
2000.
Here's the scenario. I don't like doing this. Anyway, so I arrive, I don't know if it's 12 or so or 10, I arrive in Egypt and my guy say, there's a ceremony going on that you need tickets and I'm going to take you to it. I said, okay. So I go there, there was this guy, this dancing guy with this thing that goes around, and then at the end now, he took me to take photographs with the governor, right? It was Saturday night, and the governor said, I'll see you at the conference on Monday. I said, what conference? He said, well, look, you can come as my guest. So Monday now, I arrive at the conference with my camera, and I'm setting up my camera. And this gentleman comes to
No
me.
dice.
Huh?
No dice.
This gentleman comes and say, you can, brother. Like I was telling this guy today, they gave me some coffee, I brought in with Subway today, not today, but I was explaining, with the cup of coffee with no cover. And this guy thinking, man, if you let that coffee spill on me, I'm gonna punch you in your face. So I started right just to watch him in the face, and then before you know, he started rolling his spliff, right? And then you can say, brother. I said, man, I can't say no, but I'm not your brother. You know? Anyway, so
This was over there?
no, right here on the floor. So when I arrived now, he said, you can video the conference. I said, I was invited here by the government. He said, you're going to get this lady, right? And they come, they're almost on top of me, and just then the governor came, and I ran over and grabbed him, hey, governor! When they saw that, they backed up. Right? Okay, that was day 1. He had his people over there, right? Day 2, he had nobody. I was there, and I videoed the thing. So at the end of the day now, when I'm going into the hotel, I see this guy watching the door, and this woman coming upset. that he didn't have so much. He got these people to sign off on exhibiting their research on not only those two tombs, but tombs on that area. All right, and there was nobody there, so he had egg on his face, and I said, I pull out my what you call it, that goes in the camera, you know. No, the little thing like that.
Oh,
It's a film.
No,
the roll of film.
no. Anyway,
Yeah,
so I said, I got everything here. I saved his bacon. Yeah. Anyway, so he sent his guy over to my room, and they just took up everything I had. But that's.
They took everything you had?
No, the flash drive, not the flash drive, but the other
The
thing.
disc.
Yeah, the little thing like that.
The little disc.
Yeah, you know, but so, let me tell you something. I know the story about a lot of these people, because I was there from the beginning with Dr. Ben, okay? And all the people that profited from knowledge of Ben, I know where the skeletons are buried, okay? Because not everybody has been righteous like Mark.
Yeah, I'm sure it has a lot of.
Let me try to get this in before. So this father and son recognition also applied to the gods. Okay, so Ra and Atum were father and son, though one God. Osiris, and they had Ra, Atum, Shu and Tefnut, Geb and Nut, and Osiris, and his son Horus, right? So, by the New Kingdom, the theologians fuse Ra and Amun theology, creating Amun-Ra as a super god. We know that the Theban triad consisted of Amun, the sun god, his wife Mut, the earth goddess, and their son Khonsu, the moon god. However, during this period, we also encountered not simply the fusion of Amun and Ra, but also the fusion of Amun and Min. So you have three gods in one here in the New Kingdom: Amun, Ra, and Min. Amun, Ra, Min. Now, Amenhotep III, he built the Temple of Luxor. I have a book on the Temple of Luxor. It's one of the few full-length books on that temple. Like, same thing with Hatshepsut and Karnak. Where the Opet festival was celebrated as the greatest such festival during the New Kingdom. The purpose for building this temple of Luxor was to celebrate the Opet festival, where Amun, his wife and son, left Karnak and by boat and by land processions arrived at Luxor temple. We know Amun's son was Khonsu. Check this out. But Amun was also the son of Amenhotep, the king of the gods, was a son of the black god. Of course, Amenhotep was a black god. Amun was a black god. Ra was a black god. Min was a black god. And they don't tell you much about that. I think one of the earlier lectures I showed you how on the cover of one book the gods look this way, but on the inside they show you an illustration that is far from what the cover looks like. So again, we often fall victim of not simply falsity, but misrepresentation as well. So we know Amun's son was Consul, but Amun was also the son of Amenemopet, whom the festival was named after, and to celebrate the divine royal Ka, which is this continuity spirit from the beginning, from the first dynasty right through, and you know, you needed vigorous leadership to continue the spirit. And once they were not able to, then the foreigners came in and destroyed whatever. So, let me try to run through this here. So, we have the centers of creation: Heliopolis, Memphis, Hermopolis, Thebes, and the principal temple of Thebes was Karnak. And I have a book of Karnak, one of the few full-length books on that temple. Whereas the Theban triad of Amun, Mut, and Consul exerted influence in the temple of Karnak, so too did the Theban Ennead of 15 divinities. Remember now, there were 9 divinities at Heliopolis, 9 at Memphis, there were 9 at Hermopolis, there were 7 at Abydos, but there were 15 at Karnak. These 15 were Amun, Ra, and head of the southern ark, Luxor. He was the Lord of heaven and his gods. Mut, the Lady of heaven, mistress of the world. Consul, Nephihita, men with symbol and temple. Isis, Nebuchadnezzar, Thoth. Mart, the Lady of Amenta, Hathor. Osiris, Nephakenti, Horus of the two horizons. He of the embalmed chamber, which is Anubis. Hathor, which is a form of Hathor. The governor of the house of the physicians, Anubis. And Nephthys. These then were the 15 members of the Theban Ennead, resident in Karnak, temple and home of Amun-Ra. So,
Go ahead, Doc.
okay, so let's talk about Amun, because we haven't given him any kind of place, thank you. Okay, so his origin. He was self-created, and as he fashioned himself, nobody knew his forms. He existed first of the 8 gods of Khnemu, Hermopolis. Remember, Hermopolis, they thought, laughed 8 times, and 8 gods appeared, and he was 9. So the 8, Amun expropriated the 8 gods of Hermopolis. The head of the oak god was Thoth. Then he completed them and became 1. So he brought those 8 gods of Hermopolis into 1 and adding himself, 9 became 1. He began in primeval times. No other god existed. There was no god before him. There was no other god with him to declare his forms. All the gods came into being after Amun. He had no mother by whom his name was made. He had no other who begot him, saying, "It is I myself." He shaved his own egg. He mingled his seed with his body to make his egg come into being within himself. He took the form of Tanan, which is a form of Ptah, in order to give birth to the company of the gods. The hiddenness of Amun. 2. His body is hidden in the chiefs. He is hidden as Amun, the head of the gods. Amun is 1. He hides himself from the gods and conceals himself from them. That is to say, nobody knows who he is. He's just an incomprehensible divinity. His oneness, his unity is absolute. He was a trinity. He had 3 persons or characters. Champollion, who deciphered the hieroglyphic script in 1822, called this the triad. 3 gods in 1, right? That then is recognized as a Theban triad: Amun, the sun god, Mut, the earth goddess, and their son Consul, the moon god. His name is more helpful to man than hundreds of thousands of helpers. The gods cannot pray to him because his name is unknown to them. The man who utters the secret name of Amun falls down and dies a violent death. His name is victory. Amun as Lord of time. He makes the years, rules the months, ordains the nights and days. The night is like the day to him. He is the one watcher who neither slumbers nor sleep. So, the beneficence of Amun. He breaks evil spells. He expels sickness from the bodies of men. He, the physician, heals the eye. He destroys the evil eye. He releases men from hell. He abrogates the destiny of fates of men as his good pleasure, at his good pleasure. He hears all petitions and is present immediately he is invoked. Oh, Amun, okay, he comes. This is why he was considered the god of the poor. The poor suffering call upon Amun, and he appears in their belief system. He prolongs or shortens the life of man at will. To the man he loves, he adds to what fate has decreed for him. And to the man who sets him in his heart, he is more than millions. He was a bull for his tongue, a lion for his people, a hawk that destroys his attackers, and at the sound of his roaring, the earth quake. From what has been said above, it's quite clear that there was a monotheistic element in the Egyptian religion.
So when you say the poor, so you mean to tell me they were at each other? You had poor folks and super rich?
Yeah, well, the noble class, intellectual class, essentially worship in the temple to the high god Amun, the high god Ra, the heavenly abode divinity, right? Amun.
I understand that. You said righteous poor.
Right.
Poor Africans.
Yeah, the people.
So, who were the upper class, the aristocrats?
It's the same people, but the intelligentsia. The intelligentsia, okay? They believe in the high. You remember I said I talked about the high church and low church. So the divinity of the high church would be Ra, Atum, Ptah, even Thoth. The divinity of the low church, the storefront church, would be Amun, because the people could reach to him. They could call upon him, and he would answer them. And remember I talked about where they go and they make petitions to the ears that are in the wall of the temple on the outside. And the priest sitting, you mentioned like the Catholic Church where the priest sits. Yeah. So, but he's a god of the people. The poor people.
Sound like rich and poor to me?
Yes, of course.
It is so
Of course.
It's
Of course.
back to the money.
Of course. The rich could afford to endow a tomb with all of the attributes, amenities that we see today in the Valley of the Kings or wherever, or the Valley of the Nobles, or the Valley of the Artisans, the Valley of the Queens, right? For the most part, either you get a hole in the desert, or they throw you in the river, because you couldn't afford it. And those people that were, I don't want to call them middle class, everyone wants to carry something into the afterlife with them. If you didn't have gold, you get some gold paint and paint your coffin.
Get some gold coated, gold
Okay, good.
gold painted, gold coated.
Well, okay, we have it here, costume jewelry and regular gold jewelry, right? So they will be decked out in costume jewelry, and after a
Gold plated, that's what it is.
well, after a month in the desert, it starts to fade. Even the tomb robbers, when they come upon the fake gold, but they're looking for real gold.
Sound familiar?
Hey, listen, from time immemorial, there were upper class and lower class, right? But this guy could appeal to the lower class. Right? So that's why they say he was the people's God.
I know.
Yeah. And not only that, and then there were household gods
There was
You know, household gods.
household gods.
House, yeah. I mean, you know, it's like you put up a little candle in the corner and pray to,
I don't think.
okay, let us say, the goddess who administered to childbirth, okay? Or the God you believe that will help with your farm, you know? Or they have these little, little chapels along the way that you would travel and you see somebody leave a candle there.
Like little mini gods.
Yeah, right. Okay, so, but the point is that everybody believed in something. There weren't atheists as we would understand the term today. Okay, everyone believed in some kind of. You see, Mars, the female goddess, she sets the tone of everything. And if you want to survive into the next world, you have to live by the rules that she established.
What's her name?
Ma, M-A-A-T, Ma.
Mayat.
Yeah, well, Mayat.
M-A-A-T.
Yeah, right. Dr. Carruthers like to talk about being true of voice. Because, okay, in '92, I was at the new museum in the museum in Philadelphia. They had this Egypt and Nubia exhibit. And Malana Kurenge was expected. Everybody got nervous. Who was this guy? I ended up saying, he's a barrel of a guy, you know. Anyway, well, when he got there, you know, he spoke about the fear and trembling as you stood before your God in the final judgment. And we speak about the negative confessions, the 42 confessions you make, supposedly to the 42 devotees who presided over the 42 nomes of the country, right? I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And then there is the positive confessions. I did this. I saw this guy by the corner, and he looked like he didn't have a coat. I gave him a coat. The widow, I helped her. But the thing is that when you got to the judgment, and your heart was being weighed in the balance against the feather of man, what you said when you questioned, you had to prove that you were true of voice. Ma Keru, that I did this, I did that. You can't lie. So what Karenga said is that that's a period where you're nervous as hell because you're not sure if you will make it. If you survive the judgment, then you're introduced to Osiris sitting there with his wife and sister behind him, and then he now allows you to enter his domain. You remember I told you when the sun passes underneath that there are good and bad elements? Well, the good elements, the sun will shine his rays. He had an arrangement with Osiris. He would shine his rays, sun rays.
What if you didn't make it? What did they do?
You're dead.
But see, that's about you just telling the truth. If
You see a lot of...
You're going to make it if you're telling the truth. Why are you going to be nervous?
No, he said they weigh you. So
If you didn't, if your heart was heavier than
go into hell.
then you go to hell. First of all, in the hall of judgment, they have the jury, right? You have the scales of judgment, the feather, your heart. You have Anubis administered the scales, taught, records, and see if everything balances out. And after that, you win or lose. If you lose, there's a monster there, a 3-part monster of an alligator, I think a pig and a lion, and is a devourer. Either they devour you there, or you go to the lake of fire where you decapitate it. I mean, there's everything. So that, but all of this here was the creation of fear that you needed to live a good life so that you could continue existence in the afterlife.
Your spirit.
Because these people believe that death is not the final answer. That you can live among the gods in a state of purity and everlastingness based on whether or not you were a good person. If you weren't, you ain't making it. Period.
It's about where your soul
Okay,
is.
so so what do I do now? Continue or
Roll over, baby.
huh?
Go ahead, Doc.
Okay. So I call so the people were now more easily able to approach and praise Amun-Ra, whereas Ra was a high god, right? Ptah was a blue collar god. The blue collar, that he was the god of the artisans, the people who make it. And Amun-Ra was the god of the poor, right? He was overlord to the rich and the craft people, but he also had a relationship with the poor people. That's why he said, but he was not exclusively a god of the poor, like Ra was a god of the wealthy, or Ptah a god of the craftsmen. Alright, so and so the culture of Egypt expanded tremendously under the worship of Amun, where art and architecture, craftsmanship, quarrying and river transportation, trade, agriculture, scientific and mathematical investigations, even treatment of the sick and mummification practices grew tremendously as the people became more represented in the prayers and benefits. In this, according to Hart, the coffins became natural caskets painted with funerary as in the Old Kingdom, only the king could get to heaven. By the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom, it's called the period of the democratization of the afterlife. So in the Old Kingdom, the pyramid texts regulated what happened to the dead king when he got to heaven. Well, what he encountered. The Middle Kingdom is a period where religious doctrines were written on the sides of the coffins. They're called the coffin texts. By the New Kingdom, what is called the democratization, that is it. Democracy of the afterlife. Now, if you live a good life and you attended all the festivals and what have you, you had a chance to survive the judgment and live among the gods in the next world.
That will come to trust.
So, I'm skipping some of this here. Anyway, creation emanating from Hermopolis linked Amun with thought. According to illustrated events at Deir Bari and Luxor temples that depict Amun descending from the heavens to satisfy sexual cravings, having union with the mothers of Hatshepsut and later Amenhotep, impersonating their fathers, Thutmose I and Thutmose IV respectively, thereby to silence the future kings. Several divinities witnessed this love fest events, therein functioning as active helpers, including Thor, Hathor, and Khnum. Khnum once the god visited the queen when the husband Amun in heaven was feeling his oats, so he said to Thoth, I need a woman. And Thoth said, there's a queen over there married to this guy named Thutmose I. If we can get him out of the way, you can go visit the queen. And she said that he approached her in a flash of light and perfume. All of a sudden, the room smelled, and she woke up, and she saw the guy, and they did their thing.
It's not like in the Bible when they sent the woman's husband to war so he could be killed so he could have her. Was that Bathsheba or somebody? Remember? They sent the woman's husband.
Anyway, so once
he could have her.
Yes.
Once that had happened, then Khnum was the fifth creator god. Remember, Amun, Thoth, Ra, and Amun is Ra, and Atum is one. Ptah 2, Thoth 3, Amun 4, and Khnum is the fifth creator gods. Alright, the fifth. So Dr. Carruthers explained we're not dealing with 5 different gods that are competing. We are dealing with one God, one monotheistic God, seen from 5 different perspectives in time. So because Ra was at the beginning, and he was followed by Ptah in the Old Kingdom. By the time of the Middle Kingdom, Thoth emerged. And by the New Kingdom, Amun emerged. But Khnum, who made man on his potter's wheel using clay, is considered also a foundation god from the beginning. He didn't use flour, he used clay, which means that he made brown people, if you will. Right. Now, when after Amun had his way with the queen, Amun said to the lady, that child in your stomach will be, whether it was Hatshepsut or Amunhotep, you tell me what the child's name would be, and they would be king of the country. Then Khnum made the spirit or the ka of it. So you see him molding the young child on his potter's wheel, the wheel that he used for clay, making clay objects, right? And once he was finished now, he carried the child to the god, Amun. I said, Your Majesty, this is the baby. And when he looked over it, and said, oh yeah, it's mine. You know, he admitted it was his child. I mean, well, you gotta give credit to these black theologians who could come up with this great, this magnificent screenplay. You know, so for anyone to think that a black man can't think, I mean, you know, even in the whole of the slave ship, you know, they were thinking. You know, the mighty sparrow, when he sang one of his songs, he said he wanted to run away. He said, I stay, but I'm planning still, because you know that the English slave master would shoot him if he ran, but he was thinking. So the black man, never mind how oppressed he is, he's always thinking. And the whole notion of putting on old Master look over there and say, oh, my Negroes are happy. Bull. I mean, you know, the male cow. You know, but they're planning whether to board the sugar estate, the cane fields or whatever, and so forth. Okay, so in essence that, I think that I've sort of like touched upon the main points that I wanted to deliver, and I could take any questions that you have, but essentially, just let me say this finally. Essentially, the creation, every culture, every people have a concept of creation within their own worldview. I'm reminded of Dr. Ben when he told us that, you know, he was a traveling salesman. He told us he came from Ethiopia and his family moved to the Virgin Islands. And in the Virgin Islands, as a youngster, he was 3 or 4, and they took him downtown to see the world's tallest building. When they get downtown, the building was 3 stories high, and he said, wow. And then they moved to Puerto Rico, and the same thing happened, but this time the buildings were 9 stories high. And then they came to New York and came to America, and they saw that the Sears building was 105 stories. So he postulated that those experiences represented different worlds that he lived through. So it's the same way the different people, the Chinese, the Native Americans, the Arabs, the Africans, wherever they are, everybody have a creation story. We are focused on what happened along the banks of the Nile River. Dr. Obenga says much of Dr. Obenga was Dr. Diop's research assistant. He says much of what we see in Egypt was practiced elsewhere in Africa. Okay, and that we need to give credence to the role of the female, whether it's the cow goddess. Some of the earliest people were at Nabta Playa, which is in the western desert of Upper Egypt. And between 12,000 and 3,500, these people were practicing cow culture. And they were worshiping the mother goddess. And we've come to recognize that Hathor was an evolution of this mother goddess personality. When Narmer conquered Egypt at unification, the historic document that we have that teaches us about those events of that time shows Hathor as prominent on the Narmer palette. So, which means that Hathor, this female goddess, existed before Narmer. Because if Narmer at 3200 is worshipping Hathor, it meant that she had been there before him. All right? And in Luxor Temple, Dr. Ben always liked to take his students into, is that working? Take his students into the court of the Ramesian front, where there's a procession to the Temple of Luxor. In the Temple of Luxor, it's called the Ascent of the Princes, and there are a number of the sons of Ramses II are seen approaching the entrance to the temple, and behind them are a number of sacred cows to be sacrificed in this festival. And one of the lead cows is a Nubian lady coming out of the head of the cow, which the Nubian lady is associated with Hathor, who is one of the earliest divine forces that it was coeval with Mard. So in African theology, women had a special role and they were respected. And that's why Dr. Ben always taught that that the black man should worship the black woman because the things that she was able to do that he was not able to understand or do in his own right. So that's about all I wanted to say. and I want to thank you people for being patient and giving me your ear, and I'll take any questions that you have. Thank you. That's okay. You can get them?
Doctor, how does a cow of all animals become?
A sacred animal.
Yeah, why isn't the cow?
Well,
why was the cow was all that?
Cow is a sacred animal. Cow gives you milk. It gives you meat. It gives you. You gotta understand. Pastoralism is a culture or an industry practice in Africa. People's wealth is measured by how many cows you have.
The dowry for the woman, to get the woman in marriage.
Well, there is bride price and bride wealth. But bride wealth is what she's bringing. Bride price is what you paying to marry her, because you taking her away from her family. So you gotta pay, and then sometimes marriages is not supposed to be temporary. So they don't want to. If I bring 20 cows to our marriage and it don't work out, sorry buddy, you ain't getting your 20 cows back. There's no such thing as
Refund.
No, not refund. What you call it? Prenup. Prenup. So, but they worship in certain places. They don't kill the cow. They drain the blood from the cow. So the cow gives you blood. It gives you milk. And if you happen to kill the cow, you get the cow skin for leather. You can make clothing. You can make jackets. So the cow was a sacred animal. That's how it got to that stuff. And you got to realize that we're looking back at that time when man began to wonder about, what's going on, man. That's how he ended up creating the sky as heaven, and then assigning the sun and the moon to the two eyes of Horus of the heavenly divinity. Right? So that's how they started worshiping cow. They practiced cow culture, and they worship the mother goddess as a representative of the cow symbol. I think that gets to your question.
I just wonder why the cow was so selective. Thank you.
Well, you see, again,
No,
look.
the cow has multiple uses.
Again,
You explained it.
Again, you cannot bring a cell phone mentality into understanding what happened 15,000 years ago. Okay? This is a time of the tabula rasa, which is an empty slate, and these Africans are now writing on this empty slate. I think it's the priest of Egypt. He said that, you want to understand that? Try conceiving of a double backflip in order to understand what it is that you're looking at and what it is that you're seeing. When you go to Egypt, you are seeing something that transpired 5,000 years ago, when there were no automobiles, no television, no freezers, none of the stuff. So when you bring your modern mentality into seeking to decipher what it is that you're looking at, you're lost from the beginning. You just have to try to see what they can teach you. All right? And it's not for you to question why they worship the cow. It is what it is. Yes, sir.
different times they worship different things. They still worship the cat, you know, so.
Well, the thing is that they worship something that, according to them,
Right.
was useful, right? Was useful. If you got a dozen cows, you could get a dozen jugs of milk every day, right? And then you could do what you got to do for your daily fare. If for one reason or the other you have to kill the cow in a sacrifice or whatever, you get the meat. You skin the horns. The horns is a gourd, is a cup, so to speak, right? So there are so many things that so they assign divinity status to this animal that they consider to be sacred. Just as how, let's suppose, if we go back far enough, the people who wanted to travel across the desert, and they realized that the camel is the only animal that could do it. This is a bad animal, you know. And they elevated the status of this animal to sacredness, and as a result, you know. So you can't say no. I don't understand how they could praise or. Yeah, the camel could do what you can't do, which is walk across the desert for days without water. So, you know, let's leave it there. Any other questions? Yeah, well, okay, buddy.
You had spoke about what they were doing. They were paying people to file off the color and the noses. In Egypt, they started paying people to do that.
No.
Trying to make it like Hawathawa. I'm talking recent. Remember we were up there protesting in Manhattan?
Yeah, okay. The thing is that there's a lot of false information regarding who were these ancient Africans. I've got a book on who an ancient Egyptian. Okay, so what is the need for such a book? Well, because the history has been falsified. In his book African Origin Civilization, Myth or Reality, Dr. Diab has a chapter entitled Modern Falsification of History. Right? Example, Champollion the Younger, who deciphered the hieroglyphs, he wrote his brother, Champollion Figuet, that the people in he said that the Africans were black. His brother followed
check out the Diab.
This modern European philosopher, Hegel. Following Hegel, Hegel said that, you know, in essence then, Africa was an outside of the realm of history. Right. Dr. Jacob Carruthers said that Hegel took Egypt out of Africa and Africa out of Egypt. Africa's out of Egypt and Egypt out of Africa. So that strain of the European thought distanced the African from this cultural heritage. That's why we talk about how ascending the river and descending the river, right? The culture came from the south. When the Europeans arrived, they tried to go north. That's why Dr. Diab took, Eduardo Neville cleared the Deir el-Bahari, the two temples of Deir el-Bahari, an archaeologist. But he has a reference to a man ascending the river with the west to his right. What Dr. Diop said essentially was that this is how the European, first of all, this is how the European ascended the river with the west to his right, whereas in descending the river, the west is to the left. But he said that the guy turned.
Well, man, shoot, I'm strutting. I ain't always walking, but I'm strutting now, shoot, around the track, you know. No, I ain't gonna, no.
That must be
Come up out there for your
It's
chair,
all
man.
on live.
What's
Come
wrong?
up out of it, man. The doctor down
That
here
sound like a
found
drama.
out that I got a rare heart disease it's called cardiac amyloid TTR.
Tell them they on live, Ray.
We back on.
The heart is just on one side.
Being terrible.
And then I had that ache fever.
Brother Brown.
Is my toxicity on one side?
Man.
What they
Are they muted?
It get too much protein. And it's real rare.
Walter,
Hey, Mr. Deeper.
I'm retired.
Walter,
Primary doctor, she got over 8.
Brother Deeper.
I don't know what we got.
Walter,
It's out born with.
Let me call them.
Is that recorded?
It never bothered me, man. You know.
Okay, finish talking.
And
yeah, so,
it's
yeah,
just one thing out of
so, anyway, so he's saying that the guy turned to the south, just as the Muslim turns to the east when he prays,
Right.
the African turned to the south from the place where he emerged. That's his explanation, right? But this guy is trying to say that this is the European ascending the river. You see, because like everything else, I'm about to close off here. Lorna Oaks speaks to the European view of ancient Egypt. That is to say, we write for a European audience. They're not writing for you as African people in America who are seeking to decode the role that their ancestors had played in Egypt. They're not, that's why she said that Lepsius sent 15,000 squeezes to Berlin. He didn't send 15,000 squeezes. What do you think is a squeeze? A squeeze is I wanted a picture of a race. I come here and I get one of these C2 papers and I try to make a sketch. That's a squeeze. He sent 15,000 pieces of artifacts. Right? That became the basis of the Berlin collection. Reasoner out of California, University of California, sent 400 boxes of artifacts. You don't know what's in there. Okay? So they're not really writing or providing you with evidence. Again, the master is not going to give you the wherewithal to overthrow his control.
Okay, Juma, he's gonna finish up now. He's gonna finish up and then we're gonna close it up. Sorry about the delay.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Yes.
Okay, last question. We got messed up with the Zoom. You can ask him a question, again.
The ladies?
Juma, you gotta, somebody is speaking, so we have to,
Mute.
I can't mute because we went on and went off, so whoever's speaking kinda like, somebody got their TV on.
Okay, you can't mute them, huh?
No, because I had to restart. So somebody got their TV on. Can you,
Straight on the red, WPI.
You said it's a police?
We check up some reports for the first hour of today's show. And, we'll give us something for you to start I think.
somebody is
We'll get
asleep,
to it in a few minutes.
all right, look,
I'm not ready for podcast. Someone's doing this, you know, attention.
everybody's going, so we gonna wind it down and that's it. We'll ask the question next week,
Text
No,
to
2 weeks.
346.
in 2 weeks.
Monderson.
Sorry about that.
669-3336. And email us at info@applegatevideo.org. So that's that.
Okay, just.
Okay, so we, sorry about the late, give,
Thank you,
everybody's in a great big hand. And he's gonna continue his,
Festival.
he's gonna continue his lecture series coming into 2026. Next week, in 2 weeks, Dr. Lewis is gonna come back with the blockbuster on the Sahara region and, humanity of the killing. So we're gonna bring, Doc back, but we're gonna try to set up good stuff for, coming into 2026. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so maybe someone else can ask. Maybe you can ask somebody. I got a quick question.
All right, but somebody is talking, so whoever's talking gotta be quiet. What's your question?
A lot of these, it's this site called, We Brown People or something like that. And it keeps, knocking African Association or any link the Africans may have with their, the OMAC head.
Okay, so your question is, does any Africans have any connection to the Olmec's head?
Well, look,
Yeah, my question.
No, you went out.
Okay, does any Africans have any connections to the Olmec's head?
Yes.
well, look,
Yeah.
Okay, he's gonna answer that.
Native Americans, they got this strong head, they hit the hard on the internet.
look,
Okay, so,
They trying to disconnect the, anybody of African origins with that.
okay.
well, the point is simply this, okay? The taste of the pudding is in the eating. If you think the Olmec looks like an African, so be it. If you think the Olmec looks like a European, so be it. I mean, as Michael Jackson said, what did your lion eyes tell you?
Okay, so.
Okay? You remember the story with, what was that guy they were beating? What was the guy that they beat, the cops beat? Rodney King, right? Your lion eyes tell you that they're not beating any guy. So if you see that the Olmecs look like an African, I mean, you can, in Dr. Diop's argument, he said that no matter what they say, they cannot change the fact that the Sphinx looked like an African. It's the same thing with the Olmecs, okay? You can't change that. You can waltz around it or whatever you want, however you want, right? Well, he certainly doesn't look like a European, okay? So, I mean, it's up to you. What does your lion eyes tell you?
But how about South America, the ones with the broad, the broad and the lip? They got a lot of them, not many, but a significant amount.
It's a question of what has survived, okay? If there's one, that's the prototype. If there's one, that's the prototype. If not, then you have to deal with what has survived, okay? And don't let people tell you otherwise. Your lion eyes tells you that the Olmecs, remember, Ivan Van Sertima, they came before Columbus. Okay, his book, his first book, they came before Columbus. Van Sertima said that Rutgers University told him by writing that book, he would not get, what the professor's tenure. Okay? So, don't let them people rain on your parade. That's all it is.
It's just racism, that's all.
That's power.
Racism, one of the biggest things.
Power. They have the power to do it.
Okay?
If you let them.
Well, another thing too is that lots of these folks don't know no different. They're getting along, going along to get along themselves. Okay? And for the most part, any African that can stand up and deliver, that you gotta have your stuff together. You gotta know what you're talking about. So you know,
Your core study.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give Monderson a great big hand. If you want to give a little small talk, he will be coming back. We're gonna clean up. You can talk to him while he's on. I'll keep the mic on so we can set the place up. But you can talk, but we're gonna cut the mic off. He'll be back coming into 2026 for the continuation of the ancient secrets of Egypt and the dynasty. So give Dr. Monderson a great big hand. And sorry for the problem with the computer. And I just got a new phone, so I was hard getting the stuff out. I'm just learning with this Apple phone.
okay, all right. Bob Brown, you still there?